Chapter 538. The heaven and earth obsidian flame grew between heaven and earth. It was a true treasure of heaven and earth and possessed a terrifying might. It was the flame that alchemists yearned for. However, the heaven and earth obsidian flame in the hidden dragon continent was limited. There were only a few people who possessed this flame. The universal nether flame was a ball of pitch-black flame. It carried a scorching heat, and its temperature was extremely high. As it burned, the air around it emitted a crackling sound. Mao possessed a heaven and earth obsidian flame. This was the reason why he was able to challenge Mubai. This was also his trump card. This time, facing a chef like Bu Fong, Mao did not hesitate to use his heaven and earth obsidian flame. Letting out a deep breath, Mao Shi's gaze landed on Bu Fong's body. He raised his palm, and a pitch-black flame instantly engulfed him. It seemed as though it was roaring as it surged up violently. After rolling for a while, it entered the heavy alchemy furnace. With a loud thump, it seemed as though there was a long reverberation. The flames within the alchemy furnace instantly intensified. Stalks of spirit herbs were thrown into the alchemy furnace, and they were swallowed by the pitch-black heaven and earth obsidian flame. The sound of sizzling resounded unceasingly. Mao Shi's eyes contained a hint of coldness and profoundness. After giving Bu Fong a deep look, he focused all of his attention on refining the elixir. This match, he could only win. He could not lose. The clamor of the audience gradually died down. Looking at Mao Shi, who was seriously competing, they did not even dare to breathe loudly. Many people's gazes landed in front of the bronze platform that Bu Fong was on. However, when they saw Bu Fong's movement, they were all a little dumbfounded and stunned. Bu Fong placed the 8 treasures chicken over. After rubbing its small head, he began to take out the ingredients that he had prepared. The 8 treasures chicken shrunk its drumsticks, and its small eyes widened as it looked at Bu Fong taking out ingredients from the system's dimensional storage. The ingredients were dazzling, and there were all kinds of spirit herbs surrounding it. The dense spiritual energy caused its feathers to flutter. There was a stalk of red fruit. It was an 8th grade spirit herb, and the spiritual energy it emitted was extremely dense. There were also black, dry fruits. Those fruits were hard and emitted a medicinal aroma. These ingredients surrounded the 8 treasures chicken, causing it to be dumbfounded. All of a sudden, the 8 treasures chicken's body trembled, and its small eyes widened as it looked at Bu Fong. Green smoke lingered in Bu Fong's hand as he took out a heavy and pitch-black wok and smashed it onto the bronze platform. The vibration caused the 8 treasures chicken to cluck involuntarily. Bu Fong looked at the 8 treasures chicken with a profound gaze. That gaze caused the 8 treasures chicken to gradually panic. It had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. Don't be afraid. I'll be fine soon. When Bu Fong saw the 8 treasures chicken's expression, he was stunned. He stretched out his hand and rubbed the 8 treasures chicken's head to calm it down. As for the 8 treasures chicken, it gradually relaxed under Bu Fong's caress. Its feathers loosened and it narrowed its eyes. As a bright light flashed past, and the 8 treasures chicken felt a chill run down its spine. It opened its beak and let out a cry. It saw the sharp kitchen knife in Bu Fong's hand that was emitting a unique pressure. That kitchen knife emitted a power that caused its heart to palpitate. That feeling was extremely terrifying. The 8 treasures chicken knew that if it was cut by the kitchen knife, it wouldn't be able to recover. This kitchen knife, it was poisonous. Bu Fong held the golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand and moved his arm. In an instant, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife started to move, and the knife flashed. Cluck, cluck, cluck. The 8 treasures chicken widened its eyes. Where was the trust between chickens and humans? Why did you take out a kitchen knife? Why are you even more despicable than that dog last night? The 8 treasures chicken was a chicken without any ideals. However, the moment it saw the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, it changed. It became an ideal. Its ideal was very simple. It didn't want to be cut by that kitchen knife. As such, it raised its head and its comb fluttered in the wind. It opened one of its wings, and with a flap of its wings, it kicked the ground. It flew away. Its single wing actually supported its plump body, and it flew off the bronze platform. The chicken flew away. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, this idealistic chicken flew away. Under Bu Fong's dumbfounded gaze, the chicken feathers flew all over the place as it landed on the bronze platform. The head judge was stunned. The audience was stunned. Bu Fong was stunned as well. Bu Fong held onto the golden dragon bone kitchen knife and didn't know what to do. "Itty, come over, don't run away." The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. This restless chicken. He walked out from behind the bronze platform and slowly walked towards the 8 treasures chicken. The 8 treasures chicken raised its head and turned its head to glance at Bu Fong. Then it twisted its buttocks, and its colorful feathers fluttered in the wind. With a cluck, it tucked its wings under its body and spread its claws to run away. What the hell? What happened? Did I see a fake competition? Did the chef's chicken run away? What did Sunder a chicken? A role model for chickens. A fighting chicken among chickens. The audience didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They felt as though they had seen a fake competition. No one would have thought that the Black Horse chef, who had never made a mistake since the start of the competition, would actually make a mistake with his ingredients. That Sunder chicken actually ran away. When they saw Bu Fong carefully walking towards the 8 treasures chicken, the audience couldn't help but laugh. They had no choice but to laugh. The 8 treasures chicken ran away again. Bu Fong had only taken 2 steps when the 8 treasures chicken started to run around the stage. It wanted to run towards its dreams. It was already a chicken with dreams. Bu Fong's face darkened and the corner of his mouth twitched. He sped up and true energy surged out of his body. He was like a bolt of lightning as he flew towards the 8 treasures chicken. "Itty, don't run," Bu Fong shouted. However, the 8 treasures chicken didn't even turn its head back. It continued to run around the stage without any restraint. The chief judge felt that he shouldn't laugh, as it would leave a bad impression on the competition. However, he couldn't control himself as he looked at the cold and arrogant Bu Fong chasing after a chicken. The chicken shook its butt at Bu Fong, and he felt that it was a little comical. In the end, the chief judge couldn't help but laugh. Cluck, cluck, cluck. All of a sudden, the chief judge was stunned. He realized that the chicken was running towards him. With a flap of its wings, it leaped into the air and stepped on the chief judge's head. Then, it continued to run around happily. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. "This stupid chief judge, why don't you continue to laugh?" The 8 treasures chicken was a divine echelon realm spirit beast. Even though it didn't have any battle prowess, it was famous for its speed. If this chicken was determined to run, even a divine physique echelon realm expert wouldn't be able to catch up to it. As a matter of fact, the furious chief judge also joined in the chase. The 2 of them ran around the stage, but they still couldn't catch the chicken. Nangon Wuk sat on the stage, and he slapped his thigh as he laughed heartily. He didn't think that such an unforeseen event would occur. He thought that with Bu Fong's methods, he would definitely be able to deal with the 8 treasures chicken. In the past, when he was in the Pill Pagoda, he had to resort to all sorts of methods to obtain the chicken's wings. He couldn't compete with the chicken in terms of speed. Cluck, 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 cluck. The 8 treasures chicken's cry resounded throughout the stage. The 8 treasures chicken was like a streak of light as it flapped its wings on the stage. It raised its head and puffed out its chest. It was arrogant because it was flying for its dream. Mausher didn't know what was happening on the stage. There seemed to be a black flame burning in his eyes, and the flames surged violently. In an instant, his mental energy surged out like a tidal wave and enveloped the medicinal ingredients within the alchemy furnace. The medicinal ingredients quickly passed through the flames and were burned to the point where only the essence of the medicinal liquid was left. The medicinal liquid was flowing, and it had all sorts of strange shapes. Drop by drop, it floated behind the alchemy furnace. This was a beautiful scene, and it caused Mausher to be intoxicated by it, unable to extricate himself from it. Mausher was an arrogant and conceited person. His only opponent was Mu Bai and no one else. Thus, he didn't even put the chef Bu Fong in his eyes. A chef, Compared to an alchemist, Bufong was just trash. Once this 3-mark spirit pill was completed, he would definitely win. It was hard for him to imagine what kind of dish could be compared to a 3-mark spirit pill. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Just when he was completely focused on refining the pill, a strange sound suddenly entered his ears. What the hell? Where did the chicken's cries come from? Mouser was stunned. The chicken's cries came out of nowhere, and it was as though it had barged into his mind. He was caught off guard. In the next instant, his pupils shrank, and his breathing became chaotic. His mental energy also became chaotic. Where did this chicken come from? Why did it come to my alchemy furnace? On top of the heavy lid of the alchemy furnace, a chicken with its head raised suddenly jumped up. Its neck was shaking from side to side. Mouser's eyes widened, and the chicken's small eyes also widened. A human and a chicken looked at each other awkwardly. 80. Stop fooling around. He is refining his pill. Be more serious. From afar, when Bufong saw this scene, he hurriedly took 2 steps forward. His breathing was a little hurried as he shouted. The 8 treasures chicken turned its head and looked at Bufong. It raised its chicken comb. Contestant Mao, sure. You have to calm down. You are at the crucial moment of refining your pill. You have to remain calm and don't let your mental energy fluctuate too much. The head judge's heart shrank. He felt that something big was about to happen, and he tried to comfort Mouser. Be good, 80. Stop fooling around. Mouser took in a deep breath, and his fluctuating mental energy finally calmed down. You stinky chef. Hurry up and take your chicken away. Mouser coldly said, and a pitch-black flame appeared in his eyes. All right. 80, did you hear that? He is looking down on you. Hurry up and come over. Bufong quietly took a step forward and said. The 8 treasures chicken clucked and turned its head to look at Mouser. Mouser snorted and glared at the chicken. Suddenly, the 8 treasures chicken sensed that Bufong was rushing over. With a flap of its wings, it took a step forward and began to run again. With a step, it actually jumped onto Mouser's head. Its claws clawed wildly, and then it jumped up high, following which, sparkling and translucent droplets of chicken droplets fell onto Mouser's elegant hair. Bufong was dumbfounded, the audience was dumbfounded, and even Mouser was dumbfounded. In the next instant, Mouser's mental energy suddenly erupted and a buzzing sound rang out. The alchemy furnace started to boil. An angry roar that shook the heavens resounded through the air. This damned chicken! How dare it defecate on my head? Chapter 539. The atmosphere became awkward. Only Mouser's angry roar could be heard echoing through the entire plaza. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and a dumbfounded expression appeared on their faces. Did that chicken poop on Mouser's head? Everyone had a strange expression on their faces, and they were speechless. Suddenly, everyone widened their eyes and looked at Mouser's position. There was a surging wave of energy that seemed as though it was about to explode. Within the alchemy furnace, energy was boiling, and it seemed as though it was about to explode. Bufong's eyes widened, and he took a step back. The head judge pursed his lips and sighed helplessly. He looked at Mouser, and his face was filled with regret. He couldn't hold it in. The consequence of not holding it in was that his furnace exploded. A loud explosion resounded through the air. A surging wave of energy surged out from the stage and dissipated. The pitch-black flames engulfed the stage and brought along a surging wave of heat. The heavy alchemy furnace in front of Mouser shattered into pieces, and the medicinal powder scattered in all directions. Everyone was stunned. Mouser, his furnace actually exploded. Bufong blinked his eyes. This fellow's furnace actually exploded? However, this furnace didn't explode because of Bufong. It was because of the chicken. The 8 treasures chicken was also sent flying by the explosion of the furnace. One of its wings spread open and its body clucked in the air. It was incomparably dumbfounded. Bufong regained his senses and his hands moved quickly. He took a step forward and caught the 8 treasures chicken in his hands. The 8 treasures chicken looked at Bufong and retracted its head. It didn't move an inch and pretended to be dead. Bufong was speechless. This chicken was poisonous. A gust of wind blew past, and the black smoke that enveloped the stage dissipated. A figure with an incomparably oppressive aura slowly appeared. Mao Shi's eyes seemed to be spitting fire. His furnace exploded? His furnace actually exploded? It wasn't because of Bufong's dish, and it wasn't because of his own mistake. It was because a chicken had pooped on his head. He felt a burning pain on his face. No matter what, his furnace still exploded. Although the cause was not caused by Bufong, when he thought of what Bufong said, he felt stifled. This chicken must die. Mao Shi's gaze landed on Bufong as he coldly said with a murderous aura, "Contestant Mao Shi, calm down. Your furnace has exploded. Do you still want to continue?" The head judge looked at Mao Shi and asked awkwardly. Bufong wouldn't win just like that, would he? In that case, this highly anticipated match would become a little boring. Mao Shi glanced at the head judge and coldly said, "Of course we have to continue. I haven't lost yet." Buzz, a ripple spread out, and a pitch-black alchemy furnace suddenly appeared in Mao Shi's hand. He grabbed the alchemy furnace and ruthlessly smashed it onto the bronze platform. The ashes were blown away. Although Mao Shi's face was a little black, he was still as solemn as before. He seemed to have been prepared for this, as he took out the spirit herb once again. The audience was dumbfounded, and the head judge had a speechless expression. Bufong rubbed the 8 treasures chicken's head, and a look of shock appeared on his face. This Mao Shi is actually prepared. Could it be that he already predicted that his furnace would explode? As expected of our Heavenly Shine City's genius alchemist, his way of doing things is really flawless. It seems like a chef is going to lose this time. Once the 3-mark spirit pill appears, how can a chef win? After the audience recovered from their daze, they became excited and chattered nonstop. The head judge also regained his senses and lightly coughed a few times before announcing that the match would continue. "This chicken must die." Mao Shi coldly stared at Bufong and said. He walked out from behind the bronze platform and walked toward Bufong. His killing intent was locked onto the 8 treasures chicken. Bufong furrowed his brows. How could he allow Mao Shi to kill the 8 treasures chicken? Although this chicken was a little amusing, it was still his chicken. "I'm sorry, but this chicken cannot die." Bufong's feet touched the ground, and his figure instantly retreated. He chose to protect the 8 treasures chicken. If Mao Shi wanted the 8 treasures chicken to die, would it die? If that happened, Bufong would feel that he would lose a lot of face. Mao Shi stood still and coldly laughed as he looked at Bufong. "Very good. You want to protect this chicken? That's fine. Then don't use this chicken in this match. Since it wants to live, let it live well. After the match, I will definitely slaughter this chicken." Bufong was stunned, and he narrowed his eyes. This Mao Shi was trying to trick him. He should have seen that the 8 treasures chicken was extraordinary. If he were to use this chicken to cook, the dish would naturally be extraordinary as well. Thus, Mao Shi was trying to trick Bufong and not allow Bufong to choose the 8 treasures chicken. "The 2 of you, please return to your positions. The match will continue," the head judge said with a straight face. Bufong narrowed his eyes, and Mao Shi's eyes were cold. The 2 of them stared at each other, and there seemed to be light colliding in their eyes. "Fine. If you use this chicken, it will be my loss," Bufong said calmly. Rubbing the 8 treasures chicken's head, he walked back to his bronze platform and placed the 8 treasures chicken to the side. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he took out a huge iron cage from the system's dimensional storage. A heavenly flame chicken that was covered in flames was taken out by Bufong. Although the heavenly flame chicken was much weaker than the 8 treasures chicken, Bufong had no other choice. He had to find a chicken to use. This chicken was something that he had exchanged with the system. The 8 treasures chicken lay in the distance, and when it saw Bufong take out a chicken that was covered in flames, it seemed to understand that it had escaped with its life. In an instant, its eyeballs started to roll. Bufong did not care about the 8 treasures chicken, and he started to cook. He opened his mouth, and suddenly a ball of golden flame spewed out, burning fiercely. Buzz, the 10,000 bestial flames, was also a heaven and earth obsidian flame. The moment it entered the wok, it emitted a mysterious fluctuation. Mouser was stunned, and the universal dark flame in his alchemy furnace became restless. In an instant, it became a flaming skull in front of him. The 10,000 bestial flames rose up and turned into the head of a spirit beast that opened its mouth and roared. It was hard to tell what the spirit beast was, and it didn't look like anything. However, the pressure it emitted was majestic. The two heaven and earth obsidian flames seemed to be in a stalemate as their energies collided. The collision of the two heaven and earth obsidian flames caused the audience to be incomparably excited. Buffon glanced at it and continued to cook. He plucked the feathers of the heavenly flame chicken, and with a twist of the dragon bone kitchen knife, he cleaned the internal organs of the heavenly flame chicken. Finally, he placed the entire chicken into a bowl. With a twist of the dragon bone kitchen knife, Buffon made a small cut on the chicken's neck. He pierced the heavenly flame chicken's left wing through the cut, causing the wing tip to protrude out of the chicken's beak. He did the same with the other wing, causing the left and right wings to be fixed in place. Buffon's expression was solemn as he calmly pulled the chicken leg. With a twist of the dragon bone kitchen knife, he smashed it down with the back of the knife. True energy surged as he smashed the leg bone. He intersected the two broken leg bones and stuffed them into the chicken's stomach, giving the chicken a unique pose. The 8 treasures chicken was in the distance, and when it saw the dazzling pose of the heavenly flame chicken, its comb trembled. It was too scary. Its resistance was indeed correct. If it didn't resist, the one in this pose would be it. After giving the heavenly flame chicken a pose, Buffon turned his head and glanced at the 8 treasures chicken. This gave the chicken a fright, and it shrunk its neck. After that, Buffon continuously pressed on the chicken's body. True energy surged out from his fingers and entered the chicken's body, causing the chicken to loosen up. After doing all this, Buffon began the next step. He took out a blue and white porcelain bowl. The bowl was rather big, and it was filled with orange syrup. Under the curious gazes of the audience, Buffon poured the syrup onto the heavenly flame chicken, causing the syrup to evenly cover the entire body of the heavenly flame chicken. After watering the heavenly flame chicken, Buffon placed the heavenly flame chicken to the side. He heated up the black turtle constellation wok and poured a sufficient amount of oil into it. When the oil started to boil, Buffon stretched out his hand and felt the temperature of the oil. He narrowed his eyes and placed the heavenly flame chicken, which was covered with syrup, into the wok. He started to fry it. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The oil in the wok started to boil, and white bubbles could be seen rolling around. The moment the heavenly flame chicken entered the wok, its entire body seemed to be burning with flames. It was incomparably dazzling, and the color of the chicken's body changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, it turned golden. A rich fragrance of meat wafted out from the wok. This was the fragrance of fried meat, and it was especially attractive. The audience couldn't help but take in a deep breath. So fragrant. They smelled this rich fragrance again. Every time they watched Buffon compete, it was a kind of enjoyment. It was because they could smell a fragrance that they rarely smelled. This fragrance caused many people to sink into it. Buffon took out the heavenly flame chicken from the black turtle constellation wok. After draining the oil, he placed it to the side. The golden oil slowly dripped down from the heavenly flame chicken's body. It was steaming hot and fragrant. However, this was not the finished product. It was only half done. After removing the oil in the wok, Buffon started to prepare for the next step. The next step was the most important one. In the distance, Mouser once again calmed his heart and started to cook seriously. He gritted his teeth, and his mental force surged. A buzzing sound resounded through the air. A medicinal fragrance drifted out from his alchemy furnace. However, he furrowed his brows. A wave of fragrance drifted over from afar, causing him to fall into a trance. Damn it, my first attempt at alchemy was ruined by that chicken. Right now, it's hard for me to concentrate. Mouser's eyes were bloodshot as he gritted his teeth in hatred. The chicken's fragrance floated over and continuously drilled into Mouser's nose, causing his heart to ripple uncontrollably. However, it was still okay. The fragrance was not too strong, and he could still endure it. However, his heart was a little anxious. Could it be that his furnace would explode a second time? He could not allow it to explode a second time. He did not prepare a new alchemy furnace. Once the furnace exploded, he would really lose. Bufang did not know what Mouser was feeling at this moment. Bufang placed the golden fried heavenly flame chicken into the black turtle constellation wok and poured in a sufficient amount of Heaven Alps spirit spring water. This spirit spring water completely covered the entire heavenly flame chicken. Gulp! After a few bubbles appeared, the heavenly flame chicken floated in the spirit spring water. He chopped all the spirit herbs into small pieces and mixed them together. Then, he poured all the spirit herbs into the wok. Sucking in a deep breath, Bufang's eyes lit up, and he activated the 10,000 bestial flames. The 10,000 bestial flames burned brightly, and a huge fire burned. The entire black turtle constellation wok seemed to have come to life. Gulp, gulp, under the blazing fire, the spirit spring water in the wok began to boil. Bufang's mental force surged and entered the wok. He began to guide the spirit energy within the wok. The spirit of the spirit herbs seeped into the chicken, and only a layer of residue was left floating on top of the soup. After removing the residue from the wok, the spirit spring water within the wok was still boiling. He suppressed the flame to a small flame and slowly burned it. The boiling strength within the wok became smaller, and the chicken began to stew. Bufang closed his eyes and clasped his hands behind his back. His mental force surged, and he began to control the spirit energy within the wok to slowly seep into the chicken. As the spirit energy seeped into the wok, a rich fragrance quietly permeated the air. This time, the fragrance was extremely rich. Accompanied by a unique medicinal fragrance, it instantly spread throughout the entire arena. The audience breathed in deeply, intoxicated. The head judge also quietly moved in front of Bufang and began to enjoy the fragrance. The audience could feel that the fragrance was brewing. It was like a flower that was waiting to bloom. When the flower bloomed, the fragrance would spread for 10 miles. However, it was different from everyone else's intoxication. When Mouser smelled the rich fragrance of the meat, his heart instantly tensed up. Chapter 540. On the stage, the Shura Saintess unconsciously put down her crossed legs. Her eyes narrowed, and as she breathed in and out, the fragrance that lingered in the air entered her nostrils. She was a little surprised because she didn't think that the fragrance in the air would be so fragrant. It was so fragrant that it exceeded her expectations. Old demon, this fragrance is really not ordinary. This chef really has some tricks up his sleeves. The Shura Saintess' red lips curled up as she said to the old servant beside her. After all, he is a chef who was able to make a name for himself in the Pill Palace. In this place where elixirs are supreme, for such a chef to appear, it naturally means that this chef is not ordinary, the old servant said in a serious tone as his face twitched. That's right, this chef is really not ordinary. Can the alchemist on the stage win? Why do I feel that the alchemist is going to lose? The Saintess playfully said. The old demon was stunned for a moment. He couldn't say for sure about this matter. After all, he had already given what he should. However, the old demon felt that his judgment of people was quite accurate. This Mouser's desire to win was very strong, and he definitely wouldn't obediently admit defeat like this. Thus, before the end of the match, he couldn't make a rash conclusion. I can't lose. How can I lose to this chef? I am the pride of Heavenly Shine City. My opponent is Mubai, not this chef. I can't lose. Mouser's entire body was trembling. His eyes were wide open and bloodshot. He didn't want to lose, and he couldn't lose. His heart was roaring, and his mental energy started to boil. That tantalizing fragrance continued to surge, and it became thicker and thicker. As the dish in the black turtle constellation wok gradually took shape, The fragrance seemed to have the power of 1,000 caddies. The fragrance was too fragrant, and people couldn't help but be intoxicated. They would subconsciously want to smell that fragrance. Mausher fiercely clenched his teeth, and his mental energy almost collapsed. The dense fragrance almost caused him to lose control of his mental energy. The universal nether flame in the alchemy furnace was also boiling, and it almost went berserk, causing all his efforts to go to waste. The audience was all intoxicated by the fragrance, and many people couldn't help but swallow their saliva. It was too fragrant. The fragrance of the meat mixed with the fragrance of the herbs was like poison, making people involuntarily intoxicated. Mausher couldn't hold on any longer. Many people noticed Mausher's abnormal state. Under the attack of this fragrance, how could an alchemist concentrate on refining pills? Quite a few people sympathized with Mausher, encountering a chef like Bu Fong who caused trouble for him. As an alchemist, he felt extremely stifled. Bu Fong clasped his hands behind his back as he slowly walked around the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. This last step would not be easy. After all, he had chosen quite a lot of ingredients this time, and many of them were quite high-grade spirit herbs. It was not an easy task to fuse the essence of so many high-grade ingredients and herbs together. The heavenly flame chicken in the wok seemed to have come to life as its body trembled. Waves of dense spiritual energy were emitted from the chicken's body, causing everyone's eyes to be dazzled. It was as if the chicken was about to soar into the sky, giving off an indescribable aura. The entire chicken was covered in the broth, and as it simmered, it seemed to be rippling in the water. Finally, when the water in the wok gradually dried up, the chicken's head was revealed. Bu Fong's eyes instantly lit up. He stretched out a finger and slowly pointed it at the chicken's head. Bu Fong's mental energy started to surge, and the mental energy that burst forth in that instant caused the entire chicken to seem as if it was brimming with energy. The small black tower that was tied around Bu Fong's neck with a velvet rope seemed to float up at this moment, emitting a faint glow. On the stage, the Shura Saintess and the old servant's bodies instantly tensed up. The Shura Saintess' towering chest heaved up and down, and her beautiful face was filled with shock as she stared fixedly at Bu Fong. I was wondering how a supreme being like him could use his mental energy to fight against so many alchemists. So he was relying on the Shura Tower's amplification? But how could this guy activate the Shura Tower? The Shura Saintess took a deep breath and muttered in doubt. Lady Saintess, this chef definitely has a great connection with my ancient Shura city. To be able to activate the Shura Tower to amplify his own body, this person must be hiding a huge secret. Lady Saintess, it seems that not only do we have to bring back the Shura Tower, we have to bring back this chef as well. The old servant said solemnly. His eyeballs, which were about to close, emitted a divine light that caused people's hearts to tremble. That terrifying aura caused the surrounding spectators, who were secretly paying attention to the Shura Saintess, to tremble in fear. When we find an opportunity, we'll make our move. If it really doesn't work, we'll make our move during the Magical Hand Conference. We'll take advantage of the fact that those old farts from the Pill Palace haven't reacted yet to capture him and run. The Shura Saintess said solemnly. According to the current situation, this chef had the chance to become the champion of the Magical Hand Conference. If she wanted to capture him, she would be going against the entire Pill Palace. This was really a headache. The fragrance was getting thicker and thicker. Lady Saintess, it's starting. The old monster's eyes suddenly lit up as he looked at Mausher's stage. Mausher's eyes lit up, and he raised his head to look in the direction of Bu Fong. The dish that was overflowing with colors and seemed as though a pillar of light was about to appear. He finally started to panic. That was because his furnace was about to explode. His mental energy was about to go out of his control, and his furnace was about to explode. In one match, his furnace would explode twice? This face. He couldn't afford to lose it. He definitely couldn't let his furnace explode. Mausher's eyes turned red, and in the next instant, he raised his palm. Many people didn't notice that a blood-colored elixir fell into Mao Shi's mouth. Crack! Mao Shi, who had swallowed the elixir, felt as though the blood in his body was boiling. He gritted his teeth and felt as though his brain was about to explode. However, under the feeling of stretching his legs, the boiling mental energy seemed to have calmed down. His mind was highly concentrated, and there was only the furnace left in his eyes. Mao Shi's skin was suffused with a layer of demonic blood-red color. This caused him to look somewhat demonic and demonic. In a magical hand conference, there was a rule that prohibited the use of elixirs. However, spirit elixirs were not allowed. That was because the effects of spirit elixirs were too strong, and it would break the rules of the competition. Elixirs that were not spirit elixirs were allowed. This was also the reason why Mao Shi dared to use the Shura pill. It was because the Shura pill wasn't a spirit elixir. However, the side effects of the Shura pill were too strong. Once he used it, he would be dispirited for at least a few months. In order to not lose, this arrogant person was willing to throw caution to the wind. Bufang seemed to have sensed something, and he raised his eyes to look in the direction of Mao Shi. From afar, Mao Shi also looked over. His expression was extremely malevolent, and the corners of his mouth curled upwards, revealing a trace of a vicious smile. That smile had a profound meaning. He stabilized the furnace, and the elixir was about to be formed. Once the 3-mark spirit elixir was formed, how could Bufang win? This guy seems to have gained confidence all of a sudden. Bufang muttered suspiciously. However, he didn't care too much about it. The heavenly flame braised chicken is almost done. This is really troublesome. Bufang couldn't be bothered with Mao Shi. His mind once again focused on the heavenly flame chicken. This time, Bufang used the Texas braised chicken's cooking method. The Texas braised chicken was an extremely famous dish. In his previous life, it even had the reputation of China's #1 chicken. It was enough to show how extraordinary this dish was. Furthermore, Bufang chose so many spirit herbs this time and even used a heavenly flame chicken to cook it. Bufang had tasted the heavenly flame chicken's meat before, and the Kung Pao chicken's texture was extremely good. Although it was much worse than the 8 Treasures chicken, who asked 80 to cause trouble, Bufang's finger that was pressing on the chicken's head bent slightly, and then he flicked the chicken's head. In the next instant, the audience seemed to hear an ear-splitting cry. That cry rose up in spirals, causing the audience to fall into a trance. The heavenly flame chicken in the Black Turtle constellation walk also released a resplendent golden light, emitting an eye-catching brilliance. A chicken that can glow. The audience cried out in alarm. The 8 Treasures chicken, which was hiding in the distance, widened its eyes. It looked at the heavenly flame braised chicken that Bufang took out from the wok, and it was extremely shocked. A chicken that could glow, mighty and majestic. How could it be more handsome than itself? Hot air billowed and surged like a dragon soaring into the sky. The aroma filled the entire arena and spread out in all directions. The audience was intoxicated by the aroma. It smells so good. Is this the aroma of chicken? It's simply irresistible. I really want to eat it. The aroma of meat mixed with medicinal herbs is 100 times more delicious than the aroma of elixirs. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. When I go back, I'm going to cook my medicinal chicken. The audience had different opinions, and everyone had different expressions on their faces. However, one thing was for sure. Everyone was deeply attracted by the aroma of chicken. Nangong Wuk's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He thought that the 8 Treasures chicken wing he ate was already a delicacy, but compared to the heavenly flame chicken in Bufang's hands, it was simply trash. If the 8 Treasures chicken was cooked like this, how delicious would it be? As he thought about it, Nangong Wuk couldn't help but wipe away his saliva. Bufang held the chicken by its neck. The entire chicken was shining with a resplendent golden light, and its skin was flawless. It was like an exquisite work of art. Bufang held the heavenly flame chicken with one hand and started to mix the soup with the other. He took out a clean pot and scooped out half a ladle of abyssal chili sauce. He poured into a big pot and mixed it with the boiling hot spirit spring water. The spirit spring water turned red. In the next instant, Bufang poured the boiling hot spirit spring water onto the head of the heavenly flame braised chicken. Sizzle! The aroma suddenly burst forth, and the radiance on the chicken flickered. In the end, it actually calmed down. However, the aroma became even more mellow. Taking out a huge blue and white porcelain plate, Bufang placed the heavenly flame braised chicken on top of it. He took out a few plump white radishes and casually threw them into the air. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun in his hand, and the knife light flashed. In the next instant, there was a flash of light, and the fragments flew everywhere. A few white radishes fell onto the porcelain plate. They surrounded the heavenly flame braised chicken. Bufang's face was calm. His fingers were stained with water. With a flick of his finger, the water droplets exploded in the air and landed on the radishes. The radishes were like a flower that quietly bloomed. Rays of light shone brightly, and it was extremely beautiful. Heavenly flame braised chicken done. The kitchen knife spun, and in the end, Bufang held it horizontally. He gently stroked it, and a calm voice resounded through the entire place. Everyone was awoken from the exquisite dish that was like a work of art. Pucci! Mausher stared at the heavenly flame braised chicken. The surging spirit energy assaulted his face, and he felt a sense of crisis. In the next instant, he opened his mouth and coughed out a mouthful of blood. Blood seeped out from all the pores on his body and even his nostrils. In an instant, he cut a sorry figure. Boom! With a loud explosion, the alchemy furnace returned to silence. In the next instant, a pale fragrance wafted out from the alchemy furnace. Mausher's chest heaved up and down as blood dripped from his mouth. His eyes were filled with malevolence. My 3-mark spirit pill is done. Chapter 541. My 3-mark spirit pill. It's done. When Mausher said those words, his spirit, energy, and energy reached their peak. His eyes emitted a sharp light that was like a divine sword as he stared at Bufang. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were bloodshot. His aura was fluctuating, and he was smiling. It was a confident smile. With a slap of his palm, the lid of the alchemy furnace was sent flying. A dull sound rang out, and a buzzing sound rang out. Within the alchemy furnace, 3 resplendent rays of light shot up into the sky. Those rays of light circulated in the air before dispersing. The pill's energy spread out, and it was incomparably fragrant. Anyone who smelled it would feel refreshed. The audience sucked in a breath of cold air, and they exclaimed in surprise. It's really a 3-mark spirit pill. Mausher actually resisted the temptation of the Dark Horse chef and refined a 3-mark spirit pill. Doesn't that mean that Mausher has a chance of winning this match? The audience was whispering to each other, and they were extremely excited. The effect of a 3-mark spirit pill was definitely powerful. No one knew if Bufang's dish could defeat Mausher's 3-mark spirit pill. At this moment, everything seemed to have become complicated and confusing again. The audience was very excited. At this moment, they were truly excited. They did not come for nothing. This was indeed a competition that attracted the attention of the entire Pill Palace. It was indeed exciting. Originally, when Mausher's furnace exploded, they were still complaining that the competition was boring. In the end, there was such a huge reversal. It was simply beyond everyone's imagination. Mausher wiped away the blood that flowed out of his mouth and nose. His entire body seemed to be in a sorry state. He coldly smiled as he stretched out his hand. Within the alchemy furnace, 2 pale blood-colored elixirs floated out. On the surface of the pale blood-colored elixir, there were 3 congealed lines. There was no doubt that was a 3-mark spirit pill. Do you know what this is? You should have never seen an elixir of this grade, right? Mausher held onto the 2 spirit pills and carefully took out a jade bottle from his spatial spirit tool. He threw the 2 3-mark spirit pills that were still emitting warmth into the jade bottle as he sneered at Bufang. Bufang placed his hands behind his back and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Mausher. He didn't expect Mausher's furnace to not explode. The fragrance emitted by the heavenly flame braised chicken was something that even Bu Fong could not endure. However, Mao Shi was actually able to endure it. The head judge walked over. He raised his hand and signaled for the two of them to stop. Both of their works had appeared, which meant that it was time to evaluate the final results. The few alchemy grandmasters on the high platform couldn't wait any longer. They slowly landed on the stage and stared at Bu Fong's heavenly flame braised chicken on the bronze platform. This time, their expressions were very solemn. After all, Mao Shi had concocted a 3-mark spirit pill. This was a very competitive 3-mark spirit pill. How could a dish compare to a 3-mark spirit pill? Even though they were highly respected alchemy grandmasters, they did not dare to come to a conclusion easily. Mao Shi was very confident. His eyes had already expressed his thoughts. He would definitely win. He didn't believe that a dish made by a chef could be compared to a 3-mark spirit pill. Even if that dish's fragrance spread for 10 miles, even if that dish almost caused his furnace to explode, it would still be the same. Outside the stage, the audience became curious, and they couldn't help but stretch out their necks. Who would win? This became the focus of everyone's attention. The Shura's Saintess looked on with interest. This tense atmosphere caused her to pay attention to the result of this match. Old demon, who do you think will win? Will it be that alchemist? The Saintess asked the old servant beside her. The old servant was stunned for a moment, and then he lightly smiled. Saintess, that alchemist refined a 3-mark spirit pill. Can you imagine what dish can be compared to a 3-mark spirit pill? A dish is not an elixir. The difference between a dish and an elixir is incomparable. They were all cultivators, and naturally, they knew how precious elixirs were. Especially when it was a 3-mark spirit pill. You really believe in that guy. The Saintess looked at the old servant in surprise and smiled. However, she felt that the result would not be so simple. She didn't know why. Perhaps this was a woman's intuition. Please place the finished product on the bronze platform. The head judge said solemnly. This match was really intense, and he couldn't help but be serious. He nodded his head at the few alchemy grandmasters and walked towards Mao Shi's position. He held a jade talisman in his hand and activated his true energy. The array within the jade talisman burst forth and enveloped the pale blood-colored elixir. The light from the array shone brightly, and it was extremely resplendent. The audience cried out in surprise. As expected of a 3-mark spirit pill, the density of the spiritual energy was extraordinary. This was also the elixir with the densest spiritual energy that the audience had seen in this magical hand conference. Mao Shi was indeed the genius alchemist of Heavenly Shine City. He dared to challenge Mubai. Could Bu Fong really win? The hearts of the audience were a little shaken, and they were a little uncertain. They all looked at the steaming heavenly flame braised chicken. The density of the spiritual energy in the elixir matches. The head judge said. Grandmaster Xianming walked over, and he frowned as he took the elixir. He carefully examined it. The elixir was warm, and it emitted a lustrous glow. It was refined perfectly. Although the furnace almost exploded during the process, Mao Shi managed to hold on. Grandmaster Yao Guang was very satisfied. After all, Mao Shi was his disciple, and he was able to shine in the magical hand conference. As his teacher, he was also proud. Grandmaster Guhi smiled with his eyes narrowed. However, there was a profound look in his narrowed eyes. Previously, Mao Shi's furnace was about to explode. He swallowed a blood-colored elixir and stabilized the situation. His mental energy erupted, and he successfully refined the elixir. This was indeed a little strange. The other grandmasters should be aware of this, but they didn't pursue the matter. This was because they saw clearly that the elixir that Mao Shi swallowed was not a spirit pill. Since it was not a spirit pill, it was in line with the rules. Not bad. The medicinal effect is also very strong. It can be considered a high-quality 3-mark spirit pill. Not bad. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Grandmaster Xianming smiled and nodded his head. He threw the elixir back into the jade bottle and said. The moment he said that, the hearts of the audience rose to their throats. Mao Shi, on the other hand, revealed a look of ecstasy. Although there was still blood flowing from his nostrils and his face was a little pale, the excitement on his face could not be concealed. Ha ha! Thank you, Grandmaster Xianming. It seems like I will definitely win this match. Mao Shi was so excited that he danced around. However, because of the side effects of consuming the Sure elixir, his footsteps were a little weak, and he staggered a few steps back. In the eyes of the audience, this was a sign of excessive excitement. However, in the eyes of the Grandmasters, it was a little strange. Grandmaster Gu narrowed his eyes, and they emitted a bright light. Something was strange. It's too early to say that you will win. Grandmaster Xianming looked at Mao Shi and smiled. Everyone walked toward Bu Fang's bronze platform with their hands clasped behind their backs. A dish can win against a 3-mark spirit pill? Mao Shi, don't believe it. Mao Shi coldly snorted. At this moment, his entire body was relaxed. He felt that everything he had done was worth it. Bu Fang was very calm. He glanced at Mao Shi, who was so excited that he was about to dance, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Little chef, what is the name of the dish this time? Grandmaster Xianming said to Bu Fang in an amiable manner. The other Grandmasters all took a deep breath. The fragrance of the chicken, mixed with the fragrance of the herbs, entered their noses, causing all the pores on their bodies to open up. This caused them to be shocked. This dish was not ordinary. Heavenly Flame braised chicken. Everyone, please, Bu Fang said. What a beautiful plate presentation. The carvings of the radish epiphyllum are too gorgeous. It's as though it's real, one of the Grandmasters exclaimed. As for the Heavenly Flame braised chicken that was surrounded by the carvings of the radish epiphyllum, it shone brilliantly. The golden chicken skin was incomparably resplendent, and it was like a work of art. Steam rose up, bringing with it a little hazy. Gulp, the few Grandmasters involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva. In that case, let's have a taste. Grandmasters, please. Grandmaster Xianming nodded at Grandmaster Gu He, who was beside him. He picked up his chopsticks and prepared to eat. However, before their chopsticks could touch the chicken, Bu Fang furrowed his brows and raised his hand to stop them. This dish does not require chopsticks, Bu Fang said in a serious tone. No chopsticks? How are they supposed to eat it? Eat it with their hands? Braised chicken. Braised chicken. Could it be that they were supposed to eat it with their hands? What kind of scandal would that be? They were all highly respected alchemy grandmasters. The faces of the few grandmasters instantly changed. Bu Fang looked at them and did not say anything. His mental force surged, and the small black pagoda on his neck floated up, allowing Bu Fang's mental force to spread out. His finger lightly tapped on the chicken's head. In an instant, it was as though a stone had been thrown into a mirror-like water. Ripples appeared. Boom! The Heavenly Flame braised chicken instantly burst forth with a fiery light. The blazing flames were like a chicken crowing with its head held high. The flames did not last for long. Soon, they became faintly discernible as they covered the chicken's body. We can start now. Bu Fang smelled the fragrance, which had become stronger in an instant, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. However, the few grandmasters were dumbfounded. You told us to eat it with our hands. In the end, you lit the fire. Are you telling us to eat fire? You're doing this on purpose, right? The few grandmasters looked at each other and hesitated. Although the fragrance was tempting, they really could not bear to eat it. Trying to act mysterious. Do you think you can win by making some flames? What a joke. You're just trying to impress the crowd. Mao Shi sneered from afar. Bu Fang glanced at him and did not say anything. He turned his head to look at the few grandmasters who were still hesitating. He could not help but curl his lips. I really don't know what you guys are afraid of, Bu Fang said. In the next instant, Bu Fang covered his palm with true energy and grabbed the braised chicken. Rip! Without any hesitation, Bu Fang tore apart the chicken drumstick. The oil splashed everywhere, and the chicken skin was torn apart, revealing the fragrant meat underneath. The meat became more tender, and the fragrance was incomparably rich. Bu Fang grabbed a chicken drumstick, and there were still pieces of chicken skin hanging on it. After passing the drumstick to Grandmaster Xianming, Bufang continued to tear the chicken meat apart. The rich fragrance surged out, and the continuously burning flames caused the fragrance to reach its peak. Looking at the golden and resplendent meat, the faint heat caused Grandmaster Xianming's face to turn red. Gulp, I really want to eat it. Then let's eat it. This is a competition. It's just that it's a little special. It won't affect their image. The others should be able to understand. After comforting himself, Grandmaster Xianming's eyes lit up. He grabbed the chicken drumstick and stuffed it into his mouth. With a bite, his eyes instantly widened. Chapter 542. His first bite. It was tender and smooth. As soon as the chicken entered his mouth, it slid into his mouth and rolled around his tongue. It was incomparably smooth. That feeling caused Grandmaster Xianming's eyes to widen. The hot and tender chicken, coupled with the fragrant oil, burst forth in an instant, causing Grandmaster Xianming's body to slightly tremble. This taste, it was simply too amazing. Grandmaster Xianming looked at Bufang, and his gaze was filled with shock. It was simply too delicious. He had never eaten such a delicious chicken before. How could it be so delicious? Grandmaster Xianming continuously chewed on the chicken drumstick. How could he still care about his image? Compared to his image, he felt that the chicken was more delicious. The tender and smooth chicken meat was the main reason why he was tempted. He ate until his mouth was covered in oil. Raising his hand, he wiped his beard and continued to chew on the chicken. That eating manner. The other Grandmasters were not much better than Grandmaster Xianming. Grandmaster Gu grabbed a chicken wing and chewed on it. His eyes lit up as he ate. They completely ignored the flames that covered the chicken meat. Before they tasted the chicken meat, they would still care about it. Now that they had tasted the delicacy, they felt as though they had fallen into a deep pit and were unable to extricate themselves. These old men's table manners are too ugly. They're Grandmaster alchemists, so why don't they pay attention? The Shura Saintess stuck out her tongue and licked her red lips. Her throat moved as she looked at the golden yellow braised chicken. The old servant glanced at the Saintess and his face twitched. Saintess, you have to be reserved. I know. From the looks of it, that alchemist is about to lose. The Saintess looked at the old servant angrily. The old servant was also a little stunned. He did not say anything. Indeed, at this moment, he was also not sure whether Mao Shi could win or not. Munch Munch, on the stage, the few Grandmaster alchemists completely threw caution to the wind. They completely disregarded their image. After eating the chicken meat in their hands, they directly grabbed the chicken's neck and began to chew on it. Their actions were extremely exaggerated, causing the entire audience to be dumbfounded. In just a moment, only the bones of the heavenly flame braised chicken were left. Oh, there was still a piece of chicken, but left. Bufang looked at the messy chicken buttocks in the wind and narrowed his eyes. Were these old men looking down on chicken buttocks? Mao Shi was dumbfounded. The actions of the alchemy grandmasters were completely out of his expectations, causing his expression to turn extremely ugly. After Grandmaster Xianming finished eating, he calmly wiped his beard and looked at Bufang with bright eyes. The taste of this chicken is really not bad. If this old man did not guess wrongly, you should have used 17 different spirit herbs to brew that soup, right? Bufang looked at the old man in surprise. He didn't expect the old man to be able to guess how many elixirs he had put in when he was eating chicken. Unfortunately, his guess was wrong. Looking at Grandmaster Xianming's confident expression, Bufang was too embarrassed to say anything. Actually, there are 22 kinds, Bufang said seriously. Grandmaster Xianming's expression stiffened, and he felt his face turning red. He coughed a few times. This stinking brat. Grandmaster Gu He and the others laughed out loud. It was rare to see an old man like Grandmaster Xianming being humiliated. The head judge looked at the few grandmasters who were chatting cheerfully after eating the chicken, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Grandmasters. They were on the stage after all. Fellow grandmasters, I wonder what everyone thinks of contestant Bufang's dish. The head judge hurriedly opened his mouth to interrupt the conversation. After hearing the judge's words, the audience stretched their ears and listened attentively. This was the key to deciding who would win and who would lose. If Bufong won, it would be interesting. If Bufong won, he would be able to advance to the top 3. A contestant from the eccentric group had entered the top 3. This was simply unbelievable. If Mao Sher won, it would be interesting. The strongest dark horse in history had finally been defeated. This would increase Mao Sher's popularity. No matter who won or lost, everyone was extremely concerned. In the end, who would win? Grandmaster Xianming muttered to himself for a long time. When it came to winning or losing, the Grandmasters all calmed down. The smiles on their faces disappeared, and they started to pace back and forth. They didn't dare to come to a conclusion because they knew that the outcome was too important. The few Grandmasters raised their heads and looked at each other. They could see the determination in each other's eyes. That's right, they had all made a decision. Oh, how should I put it? Although this decision is difficult, it is still a competition. There needs to be a winner. Grandmaster Xianming said with his hands behind his back. His voice resounded through the entire arena, and everyone held their breaths as they listened to his evaluation. The quality of Mao Sher's 3-mark spirit pill is extremely good, and the medicinal effects are also very good. However, I feel that there are some flaws. These flaws are fatal to elixirs. That kind of feeling, how should I put it, is as if there is no soul. As for Bufong's dish, it is the exact opposite. The soul within it shocked us old fellows. It is something that we young alchemists are extremely lacking. This old man didn't see it in the young alchemists of the Pill Palace, but in a chef. Grandmaster Xianming's words caused the audience to widen their eyes. Elixirs have no soul, but dishes have souls? Why did it sound so profound? Grandmaster Xianming didn't care whether the audience heard him clearly or not. He continued to speak. He didn't explain to the audience because he knew that even if he explained, they wouldn't understand. The reason why Gao Yuan alchemists were so powerful was because when they were refining elixirs, they would fuse their body and mind with the elixir, causing the elixir to have a soul. An elixir with a soul was a true spirit pill. Bufong's chicken was fused with 22 different kinds of spirit herbs. The grade of each spirit herb wasn't low. Moreover, the chicken was specially processed, and the spiritual energy contained within it caused the taste of the chicken to be extremely good. Moreover, when combined with the spirit herbs, it produced a special effect that was similar to a spirit pill. Grandmaster Xianming continued to speak. However, with every sentence he spoke, Mao Sher's expression became uglier. As for Bufong's chicken, after the evaluation of us 5 old fellows, we determined that it has the effects of a 3-mark spirit pill. Moreover, it is at the peak of the 3-mark spirit pill. Thus, the winner of this match is Bufong. Wow! After Grandmaster Xianming's words fell, the entire audience experienced an initial moment of silence. Then, they started to exclaim in shock. Oh my God! Mao Sher was defeated. The genius alchemist of Heavenly Shine City was also defeated. After Sorceress and Sheng and Crazy Xiong Shi, young Master Mao Sher was also defeated. This Dark Horse chef was really King Dark. Did he really intend to be dark all the way to the championship? It was simply too terrifying. I've lost. This is not possible. After hearing Grandmaster Xianming's words, Mao Sher stood rooted to the ground. His face stiffened as he muttered to himself. Suddenly, his face turned malevolent. He raised his head and looked at the few Grandmasters fiercely. Impossible. All of you must have thought that the dish was delicious. That's why I'm the loser. You bunch of disrespectful old men. I refuse to accept this. Mao Sher staggered a few steps back. His face was flushed red, and he roared loudly. His roar reverberated through the entire central plaza. The audience was instantly shocked. Was this Mao Sher crazy? He actually dared to shout at the Grandmasters in front of so many people? Grandmaster Xianming's face darkened. Even Mao Sher's teacher, Grandmaster Yao Guang, had a gloomy expression on his face. Evil creature, what are you saying? Grandmaster Yao Guang roared, and a terrifying aura surged out, engulfing the entire plaza. I refuse to accept this. I don't believe that my elixir can't be compared to a mere dish. Mao Shi's hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were bloodshot. However, he continued to roar. He had even consumed the Shura pill. How could he lose? He had sacrificed so much. These few old fools sent him to hell with just a sentence. How could he accept this? Grandmaster Yao Guang was angered by the crazy Mao Shi. He pointed at Mao Shi with a trembling finger. Suddenly, an indifferent voice rang out. You can't accept this? Then try it yourself. Don't act like a little brat, and act shamelessly after losing. Bu Fong expressionlessly said as he looked at the deranged Mao Shi. Everyone was stunned. They did not know what Bu Fong wanted to do. At this moment, his opponent had opened his mouth. Wasn't that adding fuel to the fire? However, Bu Fong's next action caused everyone to widen their eyes. Oh, just nice. There's still a chicken butt left. Why don't you try it? Bu Fong raised his hand, and the golden dragon bone kitchen knife spun. In an instant, he chopped off the chicken, but that was flying in the wind. With a flick of his finger, the chicken butt rose into the sky. With a sweep of the kitchen knife, the chicken butt flew toward Mao Shi. Ha! Mao Shi raised his hand and grabbed the chicken's buttocks with one hand. His face became redder, and his body started to tremble. You dare to humiliate me? You actually used a chicken, but to humiliate me? Mao Shi looked at the chicken, but in his hand, and was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Everyone else was the same. Their gazes became extremely strange. They sucked in a deep breath. This chef was really vicious. He actually invited someone to eat a chicken, but was Mao Shi going to eat it or not? Eat it or not? You will know why you lost after eating it, Bu Fong said. He was too lazy to talk to Mao Shi. With a wave of his hand, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife turned into smoke and dissipated. The black turtle constellation wok also disappeared. Bu Fong slowly walked toward the 8 treasure chicken. He picked up 80, who was staring at the chicken bones with a face full of fear. He planned to walk down the stage. Mao Shi opened his hand, and in his palm, a burning chicken butt appeared. He looked at the back view of Bu Fong, who was holding a chicken as he walked down the stage. His face was filled with unwillingness. Stop right there. I will eat it. I want to see how a chicken but can make me lose. Chapter 543. Mao Shi's words shocked the entire audience. He was going to eat chicken buttocks? Was he really going to eat chicken buttocks? Wasn't he embarrassed? Chicken buttocks. Eat it. Bu Fong, who was carrying 80, was also stunned. He turned his head around and looked at Mao Shi, whose body was trembling. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh, don't force yourself. It's fine even if you don't eat it, Bu Fong said in a serious tone. The audience was speechless. You still have the face to speak. The one who threw the chicken buttocks into someone else's hands was you. Mao Shi coldly looked at Bu Fong and snorted. He opened his mouth and stuffed the burning chicken buttocks into it. With a smacking sound, he stuffed it into his mouth. Gulp! The entire audience, including the alchemy grandmasters on the stage, swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He really ate it? In front of so many people, he, a dignified alchemist, ate chicken buttocks. It was really embarrassing. Mao Shi's face was distorted and his eyes were red. It was as though he was going to cry tears of humiliation. He was actually forced to eat chicken buttocks. However, he had no choice but to eat it. If he didn't eat it, wouldn't that mean that he admitted his loss? Mao Shi was a sore loser. Chomp chomp. He bit the buttocks. He ruthlessly bit the buttocks. Mao Shi bit the buttocks ferociously. His appearance caused people to feel apprehensive. They felt sorry for the chicken buttocks. However, all of a sudden, as Mao Shi continued to chew, the ferocious expression on his face gradually disappeared. The ferocious expression on his face gradually disappeared. His chewing movements also gradually slowed down. In the end, he started to chew methodically. That appearance, it was as though he was tasting the fragrance of the chicken buttocks. Mao Shi's chest was heaving up and down. His emotions had calmed down. He slowly squatted on the ground and continued to chew. Why was this chicken buttocks so delicious? Was this the taste of this chicken? Mousesure's heart wavered. He suddenly knew why he lost. Wisps of spiritual energy emitted from the chicken's buttocks and dispersed in his stomach. Energy overflowed in all directions and instantly permeated his entire body. That comfortable feeling caused Mousesure to involuntarily let out a moan. His body was already riddled with scars because of the side effects of eating the Shura pill, but after eating the chicken, he actually felt his body was a lot more relaxed. This was inconceivable. Was this really a chicken butt? Are you sure it's not a 3-mark spiritual pill? Mousesure abruptly raised his head and looked at Bufong in disbelief. He looked at the incomparably calm youth in the distance. It seemed like he really knew why he lost. Now you know why you lost, right? Compared to his dish, your elixir lacks the so-called soul. That kind of thing needs to be explored by yourself. Failure isn't scary. What's scary is that you don't know how to summarize your failure. Grandmaster Yao Guang looked at his disciple who was squatting on the ground and sighed. He knew that his disciple's desire for victory was too strong. Grandmaster Xian Ming indifferently glanced at Mousesure. He did not have a good impression of this brat. He actually dared to scold a few grandmasters in front of everyone. This brat was really gutsy. All right, since contestant Mousesure has no objections, then the winner of this match is the chef, Bufong. Grandmaster Xian Ming stood in the middle of the stage, and his gaze swept across the audience as he coldly said. The audience became silent out of fear and did not dare to say anything else. The rage of an alchemy grandmaster was quite scary. Mousesure was dazed. He lost. He had given so much, but he still lost. This chef, was he really that evil? He, an alchemist, could not even win against a chef? He stood up in a daze and wanted to drag his body out of the stage. However, before he could take a few steps, someone called out to him. He was stunned. Everyone was stunned as well. They turned their heads to look at the person who called out to him. Grandmaster Guhi. Everyone's face was filled with doubt. They did not understand why Grandmaster Gu he would call out to Mousesure. Grandmaster Gu he had a smile on his face as he looked at Mousesure. Mousesure, right? This old man is suddenly curious about the elixir you swallowed when you were refining. Can you tell this old man what the name of that elixir is? Mousesure was stunned. Everyone was stunned. What did Grandmaster Guhi say? Mousesure swallowed elixirs when he was refining? F*CK. No wonder this fellow was able to withstand the fragrance of Bufong's dish and did not explode his furnace. So, it was because he swallowed elixirs. Although the Magical Hand Conference did not prohibit the consumption of elixirs, if someone really did so, it would still cause others to look down on him. After Mousesure recovered from his daze, his entire body started to tremble. His eyes unconsciously revealed an expression of fear. When this expression appeared, it caused the other grandmasters to involuntarily narrow their eyes. These few people were all sly old foxes. In an instant, they guessed that there was a problem. Could it be that Mousesure swallowed some random elixir? Outside the stage in the audience stands, the old servant's eyes suddenly widened and his heart trembled as he said, "Not good. These old fellows." The Shura Saintess also slightly narrowed her eyes and her heart tightened. If the people from the Pill Palace found out that they actually allowed their genius alchemist to swallow a blood-fire Shura pill, these old fellows would probably go berserk. At that time, it would be really difficult to kidnap that chef without anyone knowing. Saintess, what should we do? That alchemist's mind is in a mess, and it will be easy for him to give us up. The old servant's face twitched as he hurriedly said. The Shura Saintess's willowy eyebrows slightly furrowed, and her slender fingers slid across her white chin. She was deep in thought and did not immediately reply to the old servant. The audience also seemed to have realized that something was amiss, and all of them widened their eyes in shock as they looked at Mousesure, who was on the stage. What happened? I don't know. It seems like something happened to Mousesure. Guys, look at the expressions of those grandmasters. They look so wretched. The audience discussed fervently, and some of the alchemists who originally wanted to leave their seats returned to their seats with interest. It seemed like there was going to be a good show to watch. Mao She's entire body was trembling. He was frightened, and his heart was trembling because he had a guilty conscience. The blood-fire Shura pill was an evil elixir, and he did not dare to say it out loud. If he did, his reputation would be completely ruined. In the Pill Palace, he would become the target of everyone's disdain, especially when the scene was transmitted to the entire Pill Palace through the projection array. It made Mao She's heart tremble. He definitely could not expose it. Even if he was beaten to death, he must not say it. Grand Guhi, what are you saying? I only ate an ordinary chi increasing pill. You also know that my furnace exploded once, and I don't have enough true energy. That's why I need to use a chi increasing pill to increase my true energy. Mao She's face was ugly as he replied. In the distance, Bu Fong also stood up in confusion. Did something big happen again? Is the chi increasing pill blood red? Although this old man is old, my eyesight isn't blurry. Mao She, you are old Yao's disciple, and this old man won't do anything to you. Just tell me the truth. The Magical Hand Conference doesn't prohibit the consumption of elixirs. Grandmaster Guhi said with a smile. However, this smile made Mao She's heart turn cold. Grandmaster Yao Guang also frowned. He also realized that something was wrong, and his face instantly turned cold as he looked at Mao She. Grandmaster, I really only ate one chi increasing pill. Mao She's mind was in a mess. His eyes flickered and his blood surged. Impudent! Boom! A loud roar suddenly exploded on the stage, startling everyone. Grandmaster Yao Guang's face was so gloomy that it seemed as though water was about to drip out. He clasped his hands behind his back and coldly stared at Mao She. You are my disciple. It is already shameful enough for you to consume elixirs during the competition. Now that I ask you what elixir it was, you are still hesitating. What exactly do you mean? You dare to do it, but don't dare to admit it? Are you still worthy of being my disciple? Mao She's mind was shaken, and he staggered back a few steps. He directly spat out a mouthful of blood, and even his nostrils were bleeding. The few grandmasters narrowed their eyes. There was indeed a problem. Mao She's body was actually so weak. This was definitely not something that could be caused by a single chi increasing pill. Grandmaster Xian Ming coldly snorted. The few of them were judges, and naturally, they would not allow anyone to violate the rules. Taking a step forward, Grandmaster Xian Ming directly appeared in front of Mao She. He stretched out his hand and pressed it on Mao She's neck. True energy surged and seeped into Mao She's body. Mao She's body trembled, and his entire body went limp on the ground. What nonsense! What kind of elixir did you consume? A dignified two-cloud alchemist body is actually so weak. You are courting death. Grandmaster Xian Ming checked Mao She's body and was simply shocked beyond words. His face was extremely ugly as he shouted. Grandmaster Yao Guang's expression changed, and he also walked forward to check on Mao She. Evil disciple, what kind of elixir did you consume? Quickly tell me the truth. This unforeseen event was out of everyone's expectations, and everyone had a dumbfounded expression on their faces. Bu Fong was also in a daze. Mao She consumed elixirs? From the looks of it, he seemed to have consumed some kind of incredible elixir. At this moment, the entire Pill Palace's focus seemed to have landed on Mao She's body. Consuming elixirs. This was originally a very serious topic. Moreover, everyone with a discerning eye could see that there was something wrong with Mao She's body. This was definitely related to that elixir. This Mao She was courting death. What kind of elixir did he consume? Mao She, quickly tell me the truth. What kind of elixir did you consume? Do you know that your foundation is already half crippled? That elixir poison is currently tormenting your body. If you don't tell me the truth, even your master will not be able to save you. Grandmaster Yao Guang was really angry and anxious. At this moment, Mao She was a little flustered. How is this possible? With his cultivation, he should be able to withstand the effects of the blood-fire Shura pill. At most, he would be weak for 1 to 2 months. Could it be? Mao She seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes widened as he muttered to himself. Could it be that the elixir wasn't the blood fire Shura pill? But that's also impossible. Blood fire Shura pill. Someone from the ancient Shura city. You actually dared to consume the elixir used by the ancient Shura city to nurture death attendants. You evil disciple. Grandmaster Yao Guang was so angry that his beard was about to fly up. His retarded disciple actually dared to consume that kind of inferior elixir? How could he dare to consume it? Bu Fong rubbed the 8 treasures chicken's head and was a little dumbfounded. That Mao Shi seemed to have really consumed an incredible elixir. Suddenly, an uproar broke out from the spectator stands. A hunchbacked figure suddenly stepped out from the spectator stands and flew in the air. In just an instant, that hunchbacked figure appeared above the stage and floated above Bu Fong's head. Everyone was indescribably shocked. Was something big about to happen again? The hunchbacked elder floated in the air, and his gaze landed on Bu Fong's body like lightning. Bu Fong seemed to have sensed something, and he raised his head to meet the gaze of the elder. Chapter 544. On the stage, a hunchbacked old man stood proudly in the air. His blood-colored robe fluttered in the wind as he clasped his hands behind his back and looked straight at Bu Fong. Huh! Bu Fong's heart skipped a beat, and he exerted more strength in his hand. 80, who was enjoying Bu Fong's touch, widened its eyes in shock. A blood-curdling screech could be heard. He was about to pinch a chicken to death. That ice-cold gaze locked onto Bu Fong's body, causing Bu Fong's heart to skip a beat. This old man's target was him. The audience was in an uproar. The sudden turn of events caused everyone to be confused. The sudden appearance of the hunchbacked old man caused everyone to be in a daze. On the stage, the moment Mao Shi saw the old man, it was as though he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. He pointed at the hunchbacked old man and shouted, "It's him! It's him! He's the one who gave me the blood fire Shura pill." The gazes of the few alchemy grandmasters turned sharply and landed on the old servant's body at this instant. The moment the old man appeared, the head judge moved. True energy surged from his body, and he appeared beside Bu Fong in a few steps. He stood in front of the old man. The head judge had a feeling that the old man's target was the dark horse chef. Someone from the ancient Shura city? You actually dared to give the blood fire Shura pill to someone from my heavenly shine city? Are you trying to start a war between the Pill Palace and the ancient Shura city? Grandmaster Yao Guang roared, and his true energy surged. 5 Supreme Being shackles swayed behind him. The aura of an expert in the divine physique echelon who had broken through 5 Supreme Being shackles was extremely terrifying. It surged violently and rushed towards the old man. However, the hunchbacked old man who was floating in the air had a calm expression on his face. His wrinkled face did not have the slightest expression. Does this trash have the qualifications to start a war between the Pill Palace and the ancient Shura city? The hunchbacked old man's words caused Grandmaster Yao Guang to freeze. Why did someone from the ancient Shura city come to my Pill Palace to cause trouble? What is your intention? Grandmaster Xian Ming's cold gaze landed on the old man. The hunchbacked old man smirked as he looked at Grandmaster Xian Ming with a profound gaze. He slowly raised his hand and pointed at Bu Fong. I want this person. Hand this person over to my ancient Shura city. The audience was stunned. The alchemy grandmasters were also stunned. Even Bu Fong himself was stunned. Caught! The cry of a rooster rang out. The 8 treasures chicken was almost squashed to death by Bu Fong. How dare you? The ancient Shura city is getting more and more arrogant. Contestant Bu Fong is one of the top 3 contestants in my magical hand conference. Why do you have the guts to snatch him away? Grandmaster Xian Ming narrowed his eyes and his anger surged. Putting aside the fact that Bu Fong was one of the top 3 rankers in the magical hand conference, Bu Fong was someone from heavenly Mist City. Grandmaster Xian Ming had to protect him. So there's nothing to talk about? The hunchbacked old man's reaction was very calm. Grandmaster Xian Ming's eyes widened and he snorted. However, in the next moment, Just as Grandmaster Xian Ming's pupils constricted, the stooped old man moved. It was as though the void had been torn apart, and the hunchbacked old man appeared beside Bufang. A terrifying pressure emanated from him. 5 supreme being shackles floated up and swayed in the air. The surging pressure of the heavens and earth descended, and everyone felt a wave of pressure in their hearts. Another expert who had broken through 5 supreme being shackles. The head judge roared in anger. How could he allow someone to take Bufang away? How could he, the head judge, still have any face left? A ball of cyan flames surged, and it turned into a revolving lotus in his hand. He smashed it toward the hunchbacked old man. The head judge's cultivation was very strong. He was an expert who had broken through 3 supreme being shackles. The power of the cyan lotus flame was not ordinary. Even a void seemed to distort. Child's play, the hunchbacked elder said indifferently. With a wave of his hand, a wave of true energy surged out, and the green lotus flame was directly smashed into pieces. The chief judge's chest instantly caved in, and his entire body was sent flying out of the arena. He smashed into the wall below the audience's seating area. The cyan lotus flame that filled the sky was directly dispersed by the old man with a wave of his sleeve. Today I, the Shura old demon, want this person. Whoever dares to stop me will die. The domineering words that came out of the old man's mouth shook the entire audience. Everyone was stunned. What was the background of this dark horse chef? Why did such an expert want to kidnap him? How dare you injure someone from my pill palace? You demon, you're courting death. Grandmaster Xian Ming was enraged. His aura surged, and his alchemy robe started to float. Boom! Taking a step forward, Grandmaster Xian Ming appeared beside the hunchbacked old man. He punched out, and it was aimed at the hunchbacked old man. The hunchbacked old man's face turned serious, and a light flashed in his hand. In an instant, a black shadow swept out and ruthlessly smashed into Grandmaster Xian Ming's fist. A cracking sound rang out. The audience only heard the sound of bones breaking. They saw Grandmaster Xian Ming's face turn red as he retreated a few steps. Every step he took caused the stage to crumble. The hunchbacked old man stood calmly in his original position. He held a long, pitch-black rod in one hand and raised his head slightly, looking at Grandmaster Xian Ming. I've said before, whoever dares to come will die. Do you want to try? The audience was in an uproar. They were about to go crazy. This was a provocation to their pill palace. How many years had it been since such an arrogant person appeared? He actually dared to capture someone in front of so many people. Moreover, he dared to be so arrogant. A black rod forced Grandmaster Xian Ming back. Domineering, savage, anger surged, and the entire pill palace was boiling. The crowd was enraged. That was because this scene was transmitted to the other pill cities through the projection formation, allowing everyone to see this scene. They had a strong sense of belonging to the pill cities. When this scene appeared, it was as though their beliefs were being trampled on. There were even some people who wanted to immediately head to Heavenly Mist City and dismember this old man's corpse into 1,000 pieces. Grandmaster Xian Ming's arm drooped down, and dark red blood continuously dripped down from his palm. That hunchbacked old man's rod directly shattered the bones in his palm. It was simply terrifying. This old man's cultivation was definitely not an ordinary divine physique echelon realm expert who had broken through 5 supreme being shackles. Follow me. Her saintess wants to see you. The hunchbacked old man held the rod in one hand. His gaze was calm as he slowly looked in the direction of Bufang. He was very confident that with his cultivation that had broken through 5 supreme being shackles, he would definitely be able to make Bufang submit. After all, a mere supreme being was no different from an ant in his eyes. An ant dared to go against his will? That was impossible. Just the pressure of heaven and earth from his body was enough to make a supreme being unable to resist. However, he was wrong. Although Bufang was a supreme being, he was not an ordinary supreme being. Because of the system, the terrifying pressure of heaven and earth caused everyone in the arena to feel suppressed. However, It was unable to make Bufong feel any discomfort. Bufong held onto the 8 treasures chicken and rubbed its head. He calmly looked at the old man. He was a little puzzled. Why did this old man want to capture him? He had never seen this old man before. What kind of grudge did they have? In the spectator stands, Nangong Wuk's eyes narrowed. He took a deep breath and slowly jumped down. He pulled the chief judge out of the rubble. At this moment, the chief judge's aura was somewhat weak. He held onto his chest and coughed lightly. He was an expert who had broken through 4 Supreme Being shackles. However, he was actually unable to withstand a single blow from that old man. Chief Judge, those people want to capture Old Boo? Why? Nangong Wuk furrowed his brows and asked curiously. How would I know? The chief judge glared at Nangong Wuk and coughed a few times. At this moment, the atmosphere on the stage had become extremely tense. Sir, you are really arrogant. Do you really think that there is no one in my heavenly mist city? You actually dare to openly capture someone. Grandmaster Xian Ming revolved his true energy, and the blood on his hand instantly froze. He coldly looked at the old man and said, Grandmaster Gu He, Grandmaster Yao Guang, and the other 4 grandmasters also released their auras. A loud explosion resounded through the arena. On the stage, rubble swirled in the air, scattering in all directions due to the tremendous aura. The cultivation of these grandmasters wasn't weak. Grandmaster Yao Guang was on the same level as Grandmaster Xianming. Even though he was only a 4-cloud alchemist, he had broken through 5 Supreme Being shackles, and his cultivation was extremely strong. With so many experts releasing their auras, it was simply mesmerizing. The spectators all became excited. 5 grandmasters were raising the prestige of the Pill Palace. The stooped old man's gaze became serious. He swept the black rod in his hand and ruthlessly smashed it against the stage. In an instant, the stage collapsed and cracks spread out in all directions. Today I, the Shura Old Monster, will obtain this person. Since you all want to stop me, then let's fight. This old man wants to see the strength of the Pill Palace's grandmasters. With a kick, the black rod instantly spun. With a whistling sound, it seemed as though it was tearing through the air as it smashed towards the 5 grandmasters. The 5 grandmasters let out an angry roar. Their white beards fluttered in the wind, and their eyes shone with a bright light. True energy revolved around them, and a monstrous alchemic flame surged. The flames surged like a dream. They turned into beasts, eagles, dragons. All of them gushed out and blasted towards the old man. A loud bang resounded. The black rod was smashed back into the air. With a whistling sound, it was firmly held in the hands of the stooped old man. The old man let out a long breath and let out a long roar. The wrinkles on his face started to tremble. In the next instant, the clothes on the old man's body exploded, revealing his skinny body. His 8-pack was extremely obvious. The old man waved his long rod and stepped on the stage, causing the entire stage to turn into ruins. A figure rushed out and charged towards the 5 of them. Boom! Boom! Flames soared into the sky, and the rod's shadow flickered. True energy shackles swayed in the air. A huge battle erupted. The audience felt their blood boiling as they watched. When had they ever seen such a scene where 5 grandmasters attacked at the same time? In the midst of the flying rubble, Bufong's figure jumped high into the air and stepped on the rubble. He grabbed the 8 treasures chicken and prepared to leave the stage. His face was very calm, and the calm audience was a little crazy. The stooped old man was here to capture him. How could he be so calm? Old Boo, over here. Quickly come over. In the distance, Nangong Wuk had a nervous expression on his face as he waved his hand at Bufong. He signaled for Bufong to come over. Bufong was slightly taken aback. He grabbed the 8 treasures chicken and prepared to take a step forward. However, all of a sudden, his heart tensed up. With a sharp sonic boom and a whistling sound, a pitch-black staff tore through the air and ruthlessly smashed in front of Bufong, stabbing into the ground and blocking Bufong's way forward. The black rods filled the sky, and the skinny old man stared at Bufong with a bright gaze. You should just obediently leave with me. Otherwise, I won't be polite anymore. Chapter 545. The entire sky was filled with black rods, emitting whistling sounds. The scene was extremely shocking. The audience was stunned. This old man was actually so powerful. One rod could turn into thousands of rods, and the sky was filled with long rods, causing the hearts of the audience to tremble. Flames soared into the sky, continuously colliding with the long rods, causing the flames to splatter. In the air, Grandmaster Xianming's eyes were deep. His entire body seemed to have turned into a man of fire. He waved his hand, and the flames swept out. They constantly changed, turning into a giant mouth that charged toward the skinny old man. The old man's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand and waved it in front of him. In an instant, countless black rods flew over and gathered together, forming a giant rod. It directly exploded the flames that Grandmaster Xianming had shot out. With a loud roar, Grandmaster Xianming's figure moved horizontally in the air, dodging the attack. The other Grandmasters also bravely made their moves. Grandmaster Guhi waved his hand, and a dark green elixir fell into his mouth. After chewing a few times, he swallowed it. Then his aura surged, and he ruthlessly punched the ground. A shock wave erupted from the ground. The skinny old man seemed to have expected it. He exerted force in his legs, and his figure leaped high into the air. He actually dodged the shock wave by a hair's breadth. The old man held a long black rod in his hand. True energy surged, and the black rod seemed to tremble. It emitted a deafening sound as it fiercely swung down, creating a monstrous shock wave. Boom! The ground exploded. Grandmaster Guhi's figure was as fast as lightning as he dodged the attack. He soared into the sky and actually charged toward the old man. Bang, bang, bang. Grandmaster Guhi roared loudly. His figure was extremely fast, and he continuously fought with the old man in the air. Bu Fong carried 80 as he looked at the long black rod in front of him. He took a deep breath and slowly took a step forward, intending to directly bypass the black rod. However, just as he took a step forward, the black rod began to tremble, and it directly smashed toward him. Bu Fong furrowed his brows, and he was a little unhappy. This was a little too much. Bu Fong's toes touched the ground, and his figure moved horizontally. However, the long rod actually followed him, and it directly smashed toward Bu Fong. There was a loud bang. The ground was smashed into pieces by the long rod. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. His speed increased once again as he continued to move. However, the black rod continued to tangle with him. When Nangong Wuk and the chief judge saw this scene from afar, they took in a deep breath. This black rod was truly extraordinary. Old Bu, let me help you. Nangong Wuk roared loudly. He stomped on the ground and shot toward Bu Fong. Don't. When Bu Fong saw this scene, his pupils constricted. Just as he was about to open his mouth to stop them, he discovered that Nangong Wuk had already arrived. With a face full of excitement, he leaped high into the air and attacked the long rod. In the void, the skinny old man's body was shining brightly, and his chi and blood were tumbling like stormy waves. His eyes flickered, and he glanced sideways at Bu Fong, then waved his hand. Immediately, several black rods smashed down viciously. What the F***CK? Didn't we agree that there would only be one rod? Nangong Wuk's face was filled with confusion as he looked at the numerous long rods smashing down on him. In his heart, he felt like 10,000 black dogs were galloping. What happened to the trust between people? Boom! A white flame engulfed the area and soared into the sky. The white ghost Hades flame collided with the long black rod and managed to block a few of the black rods. However, there were still a few rods that came whistling down. Boom, boom, boom. Nangong Wuk's body moved in all sorts of positions, and he barely managed to dodge the long rod's attack. The ground was smashed into pieces, and all sorts of rocks were sent flying. Nangong Wuk was so frightened that his heart started to beat faster. It's too scary. This scoundrel has become a spirit, right? Bu Fong was somewhat speechless. If I was alone, I would only need to deal with one rod. With you joining in, the number of rods will increase. Bufong looked at Nangong Wuk as if he was looking at an idiot. Since the old man dared to use a rod to block him, he naturally had confidence in his rod. When there were more people, the number of rods would definitely increase as well. What the F***CK? This rod is poisonous. Nangong Wuk was careless, and a black rod stabbed his butt. His face immediately became distorted. In the next moment, several rods fell on him, and his face became stupefied. He felt as if he had lost all hope in this world. 2 rods spun and whistled as they smashed toward Bufong. Bufong's gaze was profound. He held 80 in one hand, and green smoke curled around his other hand. The black turtle constellation Wok appeared. True energy surged into the black turtle constellation Wok, and Bufong didn't hesitate to raise the Wok and smash it down. Boom! The black turtle constellation Wok was incomparably heavy. When it smashed down, the long black rod was directly smashed away, and it fell into the distance. Bufong didn't show any signs of stopping. He held the chicken in one hand and the Wok in the other. He slowly walked toward the long rod, and the black turtle constellation Wok ruthlessly smashed down. The long black rod directly shattered with a cracking sound. In the air, the skinny old man's eyes narrowed, and he coldly looked at Bufong's position. He just happened to see Bufong raise his head and meet his gaze. Bufong didn't say anything. He carried the black turtle constellation Wok and slowly walked into the distance. Want to leave? The skinny old man's face was cold. He didn't think that this little ant would dare to resist. The long black rod in his hand swept out, and the 5 grandmasters were directly pushed back. Grandmaster Xian Ming, Grandmaster Gu He, and the others' foreheads were filled with sweat. They were also a little annoyed. As expected of someone from the ancient Shura city, his battle prowess was really strong. These old fellows hadn't fought for a long time, and they really couldn't defeat him. 5 grandmasters were swept away by a single person. How embarrassing. No, everyone hold on. Don't throw the face of my pill palace. Grandmaster Xian Ming roared. His alchemy robe fluttered once more, and he rushed toward the skinny old man. This old man's target is that chef. Why must you fight with your lives on the line? Hand that chef over to this old man, and everyone will be happy. The skinny old man said. He waved his black rod, and the shadow of the rod filled the sky. Dong! Dong! Grandmaster Xian Ming was sent flying by the rod. His chest heaved up and down, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His face was deathly pale. If you continue to block this old man won't be polite anymore. The skinny old man coldly said as he swept his gaze over them. After all, they were in the pill palace, and he had been restraining himself from killing them. Hua! The audience's lungs were about to explode from anger. How could this old man be so arrogant? He actually dared to threaten the 5 grandmasters? Were the people from the ancient Shura city so arrogant? They really bullied our pill palace. Damn it, I can't take it anymore. I'm heading to Heavenly Mist City now. This old man is really shameless. I'm so angry that I want to use my crystal cannon to blast him to death. Save it. He is an expert who broke through 5 Supreme Being shackles. Who can your cannon blast to death? The audience was filled with righteous indignation, and all sorts of voices rose and fell. Bufong naturally didn't care about this. He grabbed 80 and the black turtle constellation Wok, intending to return to his store. After all, the competition had already ended. No matter how much trouble they caused, it had nothing to do with him. However, just as Bufong was about to leave, 2 figures suddenly shot out from the spectator stands. The speed of those figures was extremely fast, and it somewhat exceeded the audience's expectations. Misha and Tonghee's eyes were filled with excitement. This was too exciting. The 2 of them never thought that the Saintess would actually give the order to make a move during the magical hand conference. As expected of the Saintess, she was truly formidable. This brat was all alone, and it was the best time to capture him. As long as they captured this brat, the Shura Tower would return. Their ancient Shura city would rise again, and they wouldn't need to bear the threat of the hidden dragon royal court anymore. Of course, the Saintess had given them the order to capture this chef. It seemed that this chef was actually able to activate the Shura Tower, and the Saintess was very interested in the secrets behind it. However, if they wanted to capture him, then so be it. That woman with long black hair wasn't here, and it would only take them a few minutes to capture this brat. The appearance of Misha and Tong, he was somewhat out of Bu Fong's expectations, and his body slightly tensed up. He put away the black turtle constellation wok, and the golden dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. True energy poured into the knife, and a dragon's roar echoed out. In an instant, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife became bigger, and it emitted a dazzling golden radiance. It was a kitchen knife that could sweep through everything. Overlord 13 blades. Bu Fong's eyes narrowed, and he single-handedly held the giant golden dragon bone kitchen knife as he slashed down. In an instant, the void trembled, and an enormous figure appeared behind Bu Fong. That figure was very indistinct, but it was filled with majesty. Oomph! A supreme being wants to obstruct us? Aren't you looking down on us? Do you think that you are a woman with long black hair? Tong He and Misha sneered. Bang! As the knife light slashed down, Tong He casually waved his hand. True energy gushed out, and it directly shattered the knife light. However, the second knife light followed closely behind. The Overlord 13 blades. Each knife was stronger than the previous one. When the 13 knives slashed down, its might was boundless. Tong He once again shattered the knife light, and he sneered. He looked at Bu Fong, who was struggling, and he was very excited. A mere supreme being is just like an ant. Bu Fong's expression didn't change. The third knife, the fourth knife, after continuously slashing down 6 times, Bu Fong started to gasp for breath. His chest heaved up and down, and he took a step back and put away the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. In the distance, Tong He's face had turned purple. What the hell was this? What the hell was this? He could shatter the first knife light, and he could shatter the second knife light, the third knife light, the fourth knife light. Was there no end to it? When the 6th knife light slashed down, Tong He was directly slashed down, and he knelt on one knee on the ground. His shoulder was cut open, and blood flowed out. He, a dignified divine physique echelon expert, was actually almost killed by a supreme being. This was simply what the F***CK. Boom! 2 more figures rushed out from the spectator stands. One of them was incomparably elegant, and he had a handsome face. He wore a long green robe, and he looked incomparably delicate. It was the Wind and Thunder Pavilion Xiao He. The other person carried a heavy sword, and his face was solemn. It was the Grand Baron's sex, Shimin Xian. Brother Shimin, this owner Bu is probably the successor of the Valley of Gluttony. Let's help him, and we can't let the ancient Shura city's people take him away. Xiao He said with a smile. He unsheathed a long green sword, and the sword light flickered. Shimin Xian glanced at Xiao He indifferently, and he raised his hand to grab the heavy sword on his back. The muscles on his arm bulged, and he unsheathed the heavy sword with great force. Good kill. The corners of Xiao He's mouth curled up, and the tip of his foot touched the ground. Instantly, the sound of wind and thunder resounded, and his figure burst out like a bolt of lightning, charging toward Misha and Tong He. Misha and Tong He did not expect the appearance of these 2 people. They shouted angrily, and a great battle broke out. Bu Fong patted his chest, and he glanced at Xiao He and Shimin Xian. He did not expect that these 2 people would actually come to save him. In the distance, Nangong Wuk covered his chrysanthemum, and his face was filled with grievance. Old Bu, let's go. This place is too scary. Bu Fong looked at him with a strange expression, and he nodded his head. However, just as the 2 of them took a step forward, an unforeseen event occurred. This was because the scene in front of Bu Fong and Nangong Wuk was covered by a layer of red, and it was as if they had turned into a sea of red. The red muslin fluttered, and a fragrance lingered in the air. A graceful figure was faintly discernible in the midst of the red muslin, and it stood in front of Bu Fong and Nangong Wuk. Chapter 546. Cloud Mist Restaurant. The bronze doors of the restaurant were tightly shut. Not a single ray of sunlight shone in, and the interior of the restaurant was pitch black. The sound of even breathing slowly resounded. Lord Go was lying under the path understanding tree, breathing in and out. The fat on his body was trembling rhythmically. In the darkness, a silhouette quietly floated past. His long black hair fluttered slightly as it swept across the sky. You felt a little bored. She walked back and forth in the restaurant. Sometimes she would stand under the path understanding tree in a daze. Other times, she would sit on a chair in a daze. She seemed to have gotten used to such daydreaming days. When she was in the secret territory, she basically stayed in the netherworld ship. At that time, she could only stare blankly. All of a sudden, the eyes of Lord Go, who was sleeping soundly on the ground, twitched, and the fat on his face shook violently. He drowsily opened his eyes, opened his mouth, and yawned. He squinted his eyes and lifted his dog head, looking in the direction of the central plaza with a puzzled expression. Oh, Bufong kid seems to be in trouble. This kid is really careless. He didn't even bring that iron lump Xiao Bai along. Lord Go mumbled. Then he turned his head to look at you, who was still in a daze. He grinned, and with a magnetic voice, he said, "Little girl, it's time to eat." You, who was in a daze, suddenly trembled. Her pitch-black eyes suddenly emitted a bright light as she looked at Lord Go. "Oh, I lied to you," Lord Go said. The light in Yu's eyes disappeared as she expressionlessly looked at Lord Go. This dog was so boring. Hey, Bufong might be in some trouble. How about you? If you still want to eat the delicious dragon blood rice, then you should go and bring that kid back. Otherwise, if something happens to that kid, you won't be able to eat the delicious dragon blood rice anymore. Lord Go said. Yu was stunned. Something happened to Bufong? That wasn't the main point. The main point was that she wouldn't be able to eat the dragon blood rice anymore. Yu's eyes narrowed. How could such a thing happen? Okay, I'll go find him. Yu stood up. Her beautiful legs straightened and said lightly, "Yes, for the sake of the dragon blood rice, run, girl." The Lord Go encouraged. Yu took a deep look at Lord Go and nodded solemnly. "I will definitely bring dragon blood rice. No, Bufong back." In the next moment, Yu turned around and the store's bronze gate opened with a loud bang. Lord Go yawned again and looked at Yu's departing figure with a smirk. "It's so convenient to have this girl here. Let's sleep first." After murmuring, the Lord Go lay down again and went back to sleep. The leaves of the path understanding tree fluttered down and landed on the nose of the Lord Go, tickling him. In the kitchen, Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered. He raised his hand and scratched his round head. Xiaopi was lying on his head, snoring loudly. The red veil fluttered in the wind, bringing with it a unique fragrance of a woman. A graceful figure was faintly discernible within the red veil. Her voluptuous figure was eye-catching. Nangong Wuk couldn't help but widen his eyes, and he couldn't restrain his excitement. Bufong furrowed his brows. First, it was the old man with an 8-pack. Then, it was Tong He and Misha. Now, there was a woman moreover. He could feel that this woman wasn't simple. "Old Boo, leave this woman to me. Find an opportunity and run. I'm good at dealing with women." Nangong Wuk's eyes lit up. He patted Bufong's shoulder and said earnestly. Bufong looked at Nangong Wuk suspiciously, then his gaze shifted. The veil fluttered in the wind like a stream of water, flowing continuously. In the next moment, the veil fluttered, revealing a pair of fair and beautiful legs. They were perfectly straight and fair, just like suet jade. Nangong Wuk's eyes widened. A pair of red shoes, bright and dazzling. Her long legs gently moved, and the veil fluttered open. That graceful figure gradually appeared in front of Nangong Wuk and Bufong. A peerlessly beautiful face, tender and alluring red lips, and that elegant and luxurious hair accessories caused others to involuntarily hold their breaths at this moment. This woman was so beautiful. It was different from Nangong Wan's delicate beauty, and it was also different from Yu's cold beauty. This woman's beauty was noble and graceful. Just by looking at her, one would feel a boundless pressure. The Shurasanis's bright red lips slightly curled up, her long eyelashes trembled, and her gaze fell on Bufang. "We meet again," this woman opened her mouth. Her voice was very soft, and it carried a hint of laziness. It caused people's hearts to sway. "We meet again?" Bufang was startled. His eyes narrowed, and a scene flashed in his mind. The last time he brushed shoulders with a woman, it seemed like it was this woman in front of him. "Oh, it seems like it," Bufang calmly said. "You're really interesting. Why don't you come with me? I will bring you to a good place." The Saintess's beautiful face smiled. It was like a blooming flower, breathtakingly beautiful. Bufang's calmness was beyond her expectations. Nangong Wuk, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. This woman was really a monster. The Saintess's words caused Bufang to frown. This woman was really in cahoots with those people. He remembered that the old man who appeared first seemed to be the old man beside this woman. Could it be that the woman in front of him was the one who wanted to capture him? Why did this woman want to capture him? Did she like him? "No, I'm not interested." Bufang shook his head and directly rejected. "Io, old Bu only has eyes for the kitchen. I will go with you to the good place you mentioned." Nangong Wuk flipped his fiery red hair, and his eyes blurred as he made a pose. The Shura Saintess glanced at Nangong Wuk, and the smile on her face gradually disappeared. "Naughty, go to the side and play." Nangong Wuk was stunned. What did she mean? This brother is so handsome. In the next moment, the Shura Saintess waved her orchid fingers, and the white, tender, jade-like arm that brushed past the veil was faintly discernible. The veil was swept up. Nangong Wuk's hair stood on end. He activated his true energy, and the true energy chains swayed behind him. The Nether Hades flame engulfed him, wanting to burn the red veil. However, it was useless. As the veil descended, even the heaven and earth obsidian flame, the Nether Hades flame, was unable to burn the veil. Nangong Wuk was unable to resist at all. He was wrapped up like a dumpling by the veil, and his mouth was covered. Only the top half of his head could be seen, and his eyes were rolling around. "You must be jealous of my handsomeness." Nangong Wuk's eyes were filled with tears of humiliation. The Shura Saintess smiled sweetly, and with a point of her finger, Nangong Wuk, who was wrapped up like a dumpling, was sent flying. He landed in the distance, unable to move. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The veil swirled, and it rapidly moved in all directions, wrapping around Bufang. The red veil fluttered, and the dense colors enchanted the eyes. The Shura Saintess slowly moved her slender legs, and she walked toward Bufang. Her eyes were blurry, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. "Big sister, am I beautiful?" The Shura Saintess' fingernails were painted a bright red, and it brought about a different kind of temptation. She came to Bufang's side, raised her finger, and touched Bufang's chin. Her mouth was like orchids as she asked. Bufang took a deep breath, and a wave of fragrance instantly entered his nose, causing his face to become slightly hot. "You are not ugly." Bufang let out a breath. The Saintess's movements instantly froze. "Not ugly?" This was the first time someone had answered her like this. The Shura Saintess was a little angry. She was quite confident in her own appearance, and she never thought that the little chef in front of her would actually say that she was not ugly. Since she was not ugly, did that mean that she was not beautiful? "Good lad, you really have guts. However, this is not a reason for this Saintess to not bring you away. To be able to activate the Shura Tower, you, little chef, must have a lot of secrets." The Shura Saintess's slender white fingers brushed past Bufang's face, and with a smile on her face, her eyes became even more blurry. All of a sudden, her body slightly stiffened, and with a thought, she felt an enormous aura rapidly approaching from afar. The Shura Saintess straightened her body, and her gaze seemed to pass through the veil as she looked into the distance. In that direction, the sky had become pitch black, and it slowly covered the sky. A graceful figure flew in the sky, and her long black dress fluttered in the wind. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind. Netherworld woman. The Saintess took a deep breath, and she muttered to herself. Her expression became much more serious. In the next moment, she turned her head to look at Bufong, and her gaze became even more strange. I never thought that the Netherworld woman would be so hell-bent on you. Little chef, you are really charming. No, I guess that you are only after the dragon blood rice. Bufong very calmly guessed the truth. The Saintess had a strange expression on her face. She seemed to be unable to understand Bufong's words, but even though she did not understand, she still felt that it was awesome. Old demon, don't play around with those old men anymore. Finish this battle quickly and deal with the Netherworld woman. The Saintess' red lips curled up, and she indifferently said. Her voice instantly rippled out, spreading in all directions. Central Plaza. That rod swept out, and the expression of the skinny old man, who was suppressing the 5 grandmasters, instantly froze. He looked into the distance, where black clouds were approaching, and a majestic pressure covered the entire sky. The Netherworld woman, with her long black hair, was slowly walking over. He sucked in a deep breath. The old demon let out a long roar, and his aura actually rose once again. Yes, Saintess. The long black rod spun, and with a sweep, it instantly turned into a sky full of rod shadows, and its might became even more powerful. Boom, boom, boom. The expressions of the 5 grandmasters changed, and in the next instant, they were sent flying by the rod shadows that filled the sky, and they spat out blood. The entire audience went into an uproar, and they were all shocked. That old man actually did not use his full strength just now. The 5 grandmasters were all heavily injured, and their auras were dispirited. Their faces were filled with shock and anger. How could that skinny old man be so powerful? If it wasn't for the Saintess saying that she wouldn't kill all of you, with just a few of you old fellows. The skinny old man, who carried the black rod, looked at the 5 grandmasters with disdain. In the next instant, his figure exploded in the sky, and he instantly shot out. He floated above the surging red veil. In the distance, you took a step in the sky, and her sparkling feet stepped on the void. Her figure floated over, and as she floated, her aura became even more powerful. The old demon's eyes gradually brightened, and his aura soared into the sky as he let out a long roar. Let this old man witness the strength of the Netherworld woman. Boom, boom, boom. The 5 shackles swayed in the sky, and they slowly became blurry. It seemed as though they had fused together and intertwined with each other. When the Grandmaster saw this scene, their faces instantly turned pale. This old fellow is actually an expert at the peak of the divine physique echelon. The old demon's wrinkled face trembled, and his pale white hair fluttered in the wind. In the next instant, his face actually became younger at a speed visible to the naked eye. His white hair also became blood red. His body straightened, and he held the long rod horizontally, and his aura soared into the sky. Come, fight! Chapter 547. Come, fight! A deafening roar pierced through the heavens, and a tyrannical aura shot up to the heavens. It seemed as though the clouds in the sky were about to scatter. It was incomparably terrifying. The hunchbacked old man was old and senile. Even though he had an 8-pack, his face was no different from an ordinary old man. However, at this moment, the old man seemed to have returned to his youthful appearance. His skin was glowing, and his aura shot up to the heavens. The 5 shackles on his back seemed to be entangled with each other, emitting clanking sounds. This scene was transmitted to the entire Pill Palace through the projection array. Everyone was indescribably shocked. What kind of technique was this? It could actually restore one's youthful appearance? Oh my God, the 5 grandmasters were defeated? How could this old man be so awesome? That black stick was used to perfection. I never thought that this old man would actually be at the peak of the divine physique echelon. His 5 supreme being shackles are about to be broken. How terrifying! The people of the Pill Palace chattered nonstop. They were shocked and horrified, but at the same time, they were also excited. To be able to witness such a battle between experts was simply a feast for their eyes. This year's Magical Hand Conference was really interesting. First, there was the appearance of the Dark Horse Chef, who swept away all the genius alchemists. Now, there was such an unforeseen event. There was actually an expert at the peak of the divine physique echelon who came to snatch people away. This was simply like a dream. However, the people of the Pill Palace weren't fools. As one of the Pill cities, the Heavenly Mist city's security was naturally not weak. Many experts had already rushed to the Heavenly Mist city. However, facing an expert at the peak of the divine physique echelon who had broken through 5 supreme being shackles, none of them dared to act recklessly. Let's not talk about whether or not they could defeat him. Just the destructive power of an expert at the peak of the divine physique echelon was enough for them to be cautious. The 5 grandmasters were helped up. After stuffing healing pills into their mouths, their auras returned to normal. Their expressions were somewhat ugly. Encountering such a situation made them lose all face. I never thought that the people of the ancient Shura city would be so deranged. Grandmaster Xianming gritted his teeth as he stared deeply at the old demon in the air. Suddenly, their eyes narrowed as they looked into the distance. From there, a graceful figure slowly walked over. When Nangong Wuk, who was wrapped up like a dumpling, saw you, his eyes widened, and he was so excited that he almost shed tears. It could only whimper. Misha and Tong, he were busy fighting with Xiao He and the others. When they saw Yu's figure, their bodies stiffened and they became terrified. It's that woman. Misha and Tong, he screamed. They gave up on their opponents and fled far away from this place. Xiao He and Shimin Xian were slightly stunned. They turned their heads and saw you. Isn't that the beautiful waitress in Owner Boo's restaurant? Xiao He was stunned. He still remembered how you called him a wretched person. Shimin Xian put away his heavy sword and nodded solemnly. This woman was indeed not ordinary. That aura caused Shimin Xian and Xiao He to suck in a breath of cold air. Looking at the black clouds that filled the sky, it was as though a storm was raging in their hearts. Yu's face was expressionless. Her eyes gradually turned pitch black like ink. A terrifying aura engulfed the area, and her black hair fluttered in the wind. Her figure stopped. In front of her, there was a youth with blood-red hair. He carried a black rod, and his aura was extremely terrifying. The youth looked at her with a fanatical gaze. His gaze caused her to slightly furrow her brows. "Where is Bufong?" You coldly asked. Her eyes turned and landed on the red muslin below. Within it, she could feel Bufong's aura. Not bothering with that youth, Nethery took a step forward with her sparkling feet and floated downwards. Her goal was to save Bufong. The red muslin fluttered. The Shura Saintess raised her graceful head and looked at the slowly descending netherworld woman. Her eyes narrowed and a bright light flashed through them. When Bufong saw you fluttering downwards, the corners of his mouth curled upwards. Bang! A muffled sound came from the void. A pitch-black rod swept over and smashed down on you. The void seemed to let out a mournful wail as it was smashed by the rod. It was as though it was going to collapse. A terrible gust of wind swept over. Nethery furrowed her brows, and her figure instantly moved a distance away as if she had teleported. The old demon grinned and appeared at Yu's original position. His gaze was filled with violence. "Netherworld woman, don't run. Fight with me. Come." Sizzle. True energy surged out, and the pitch-black rod was instantly covered by numerous vein patterns. It was as though a terrifying existence had awoken. The black rod turned into a blood-red one at this moment. Bang! The old demon's eyes widened, and he charged toward the netherworld woman in a daze. It was as though a blood-red gale had been set off, and the rod covered the sky. So strong. Xiao He and Shimin Xian were shocked in their hearts. This Shura old demon was really too strong, as expected of an existence that had broken through 5 supreme being shackles. Could that waiter really defeat him? Their hearts started to waver. The earth-shattering fluctuations caused everyone's hearts to sway. The audience was silent for a moment. With such might, it was not an injustice for the 5 grandmasters to be defeated. Within the red muslin, the Shura's saintess's lips curled up. The old demon's strength is still so strong. He didn't even cower when facing the famous Netherworld woman. Maybe he can really fight against the Netherworld woman. Maybe, Bufong calmly said. He rubbed 80's chicken head and 80's eyes widened as it clucked. This chicken is so interesting. The saintess smiled sweetly, and her gaze landed on 80, who was being rubbed in Bufong's hand. 80's body stiffened, and it clucked. Are you jealous of this chicken's beauty? If you want it, I'll give it to you. Bufong was stunned. He picked up the 8 treasures chicken and was about to hand it over to the saintess. 80 was startled, and it flapped its wings. In an instant, chicken feathers flew everywhere. The saintess's expression froze, and her body automatically emitted an imposing aura that blew away the chicken feathers. Why would I want a chicken? Big sister wants you. The saintess stuck out her red tongue and licked her red lips. Her voice was filled with charm. You can obtain my body, but you won't be able to obtain my heart. Bufong looked at the saintess and said in a serious tone. Uffed. When the saintess heard what he said, she was stunned. She covered her mouth and laughed. The wind and clouds surged, and the red rod covered the sky. It whistled through the air and shook the heavens. Yu expressionlessly looked at the red rod as it smashed down on her. A terrifying pressure shook the air. The pressure caused her hair to flutter, and the crushed stones on the ground to flutter in the air. Die! The old demon's face became malevolent, and he roared. His imposing aura caused everyone's heart to race, and they started to worry for you. However, in the next instant, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Everyone revealed a dumbfounded expression. They felt as though their hearts were in a mess, and they looked at the scene in front of them with faces full of disbelief. It wasn't just the spectators and the surroundings. Even the old demon was dumbfounded. The entire world seemed to have become silent, and only the sound of the red robes fluttering could be heard. Nethery's face was expressionless. She raised her slender, white arm and grabbed the red stick. Old Demon Shura's monstrous might was actually blocked by this woman so easily. Previously, everyone thought that the woman would be smashed in a meat paste by the rod, and that she would die without a doubt. After all, her opponent was an expert that even the 5 Grandmaster Alchemists couldn't defeat. However, what did they see? That woman gently raised her hand, grabbing the long stick. The old demon's surging true energy and surging aura were like a paper tiger that was erased by the woman's palm. Lifting something heavy as though it was light, it was simply terrifying. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and all the pores on their bodies tightened. You! The Shura old monster's youthful face was filled with disbelief and shock. In the next instant, he started to laugh wildly. As expected of the Netherworld woman, she's really powerful. Ha ha! Fight! With a shake of his hand, the red rod suddenly started to spin. It broke away from the Netherworld woman's control and fell back into his hand. With a swing of his hand, he smashed it toward Nethery's head with a force that seemed capable of sweeping away 1,000 soldiers. Bang! He gently raised his hand again, and the rod was once again silently caught. The monstrous might dissipated in an instant. The spectators were in an uproar. It wasn't a coincidence. That woman was actually an extremely terrifying existence. She was an existence that could suppress such a terrifying expert. You want to fight with me? The wind blew, causing Yu's hair to flutter. Her beautiful face was faintly discernible. Crack! The old demon sucked in a breath of cold air. In the next instant, he heard a crisp sound. He saw that his rod was actually crushed by Yu. Cracks covered the rod. As the red color faded away, the old monster's body and mind trembled slightly. You're too weak. Yu's pitch-black eyes glanced at the old demon. In the next instant, the old demon felt an enormous and irresistible pressure smashing into his body. His eyeballs were about to pop out from the pressure. His entire body was pressed down from the sky, and smashed into the ground. With a loud explosion, the entire spectator stand collapsed. The spectators fled in terror. The entire spectator stand caved in and a huge crater appeared. Nethery held the long stick with one hand, her eyes indifferently sweeping over it. With a cracking sound, she directly crushed it into pieces and casually threw it away. The broken long stick instantly fell on the ground, stirring up some dust. Stunned, silence, everyone was dumbstruck. The wind was blowing wildly. Nangon Wuk was wrapped like a dumpling by the red muslin. His eyes were wide open and tears of joy flowed out. He knew how terrifying Nethery was. See, luckily he was lucky. Nethery acted as though she had just done something insignificant. She turned her head to look at the red muslin below. Her sparkling feet opened up as she walked toward the light muslin. "Hand him over. Don't force me to take action," you said calmly. The Shura Saintess' face turned solemn. However, her red lips curled into a smile very quickly. "Do you really think that the old demon is so weak? You should know, up until now, those who look down on the old demon are all dead." Boom! In the next instant, true energy surged out from the deep crater. Accompanied by a sharp whistle, it soared into the sky. Chapter 548. The deep pit in the spectator stand started to tremble. Crushed stones tumbled down, and a loud roar erupted from the pit. A figure dashed out and soared into the sky. A tyrannical aura surged out like a dragon and filled the entire sky. The old monster's upper body was bare, and his body was emitting a dazzling radiance. His 8 abdominal muscles were like rocks, and his eyes were filled with the ruthlessness of a wild beast. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, but all the pores on his body seemed to have opened up, and his aura fluctuated. As expected of the Netherworld woman, she's really powerful. The old monster's eyes were filled with a grave expression. After a single probing attack, he finally understood how terrifying the Netherworld woman was. That pressure was something he couldn't resist, and he was smashed into the ground. He twisted his neck, and the sound of his bones colliding with each other rang out. It sounded like he was frying beans. You furrowed her brows and looked at the old monster, who was floating in the air. This guy wasn't dead yet. A crazed smile hung on the old monster's face. He flipped his hand, and a blood-colored porcelain bottle appeared in his hand. He stared at you, grabbed the porcelain bottle, and poured its contents into his mouth. It was a blood-colored elixir, and it was a gorgeous blood-red color. Crunch! He fiercely bit down on it, and the elixir was crushed into pieces. He swallowed it in one gulp. In an instant, the old monster's aura changed. It became even more terrifying, and his face became even more sinister. His veins popped out, and his skin turned blood-red. He was like a demon that had crawled out of the abyss. The chains behind the old monster swayed even more intensely, and it seemed as though they were about to fuse together. Swoosh! An explosion resounded, and a series of sonic booms resounded in the air. Boom! Boom! Waves of energy surged, and the old monster's figure instantly appeared in front of you. His legs swept out, and the air seemed to collapse under it. "Die!" You furrowed her brows, and her figure disappeared as though she had teleported. In the next instant, she appeared behind the old monster. Her pitch-black hair fluttered in the wind as she raised her hand and slowly slapped it down. The corner of the old demon's mouth curled up, revealing his sharp fangs. He let out a beast-like roar, and his figure disappeared as if he had teleported. Yu's frown deepened as she floated in the void, standing proudly on the spot. Her slender and straight legs swayed in the air, and her black skirt swayed slightly. Sonic booms constantly rang out around her. It was obvious that the old demon was moving at high speed, trying to deal a fatal blow to you. After taking the medicine, the old monster's overall combat strength had indeed increased by a lot. It was even not oppressed by Yu's coercion. The old demon's continuous outbursts of strength had already caused the spectators of the Pill Palace to become numb. This is too frightening. Yu's outburst had already shocked everyone, but this old demon's outburst was even more frightening. Everyone is worried about you again. See, the old demon's tenacity is very strong. If he can't be killed in one blow, he will continue to outburst and exhaust his opponent to death. The saintess's slender fingers touched her red lips as she turned her head and said to Bufang, who had a solemn expression on his face. Bufang took in a deep breath, angrily rubbing Adi's head, but he didn't say anything. However, it made Adi cry out again. Is you strong? Very strong. That's why Bufang has confidence in you. Yu's pitch-black eyes slightly moved, scanning the surroundings. Her body seemed to have stirred up a gale, and the whistling wind seemed to be able to cut the air apart. Suddenly, Yu opened her mouth. You're very annoying, huh? Everyone was stunned. What did she mean? Boom! An explosion rang out, and in the void, the gale suddenly stopped. In the next instant, everyone saw that the old demon's figure was actually being strangled by Yu. Yu? The old demon's chest violently heaved. Even with his speed, he was still discovered. Are you an idiot? Keep spinning, Yu said expressionlessly. In the next instant, the old demon felt that his body was thrown up. Boom! With a loud bang, the old demon felt that his body was once again hit by a huge force, smashing hard on the ground. The ground caved in, and rocks flew everywhere. The old demon fell on the ground, coughing out blood. His face was somewhat ugly. However, this wasn't the end. In the next instant, his eyes shrank as he found that the sky had suddenly become pitch black. Swoosh! The old demon howled miserably because his limbs were all pierced by the pitch-black hair. That hair seemed to have turned into a sharp spear, nailing him to the ground. You floated in the void, coldly looking at him. Slowly, you raised her hand. Her hair retracted. It was as black as ink, without a single drop of blood on it. The old demon slowly flipped his body and stood up from the ground. He gasped for breath and raised his head. For the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. The Netherworld woman was really strong. Suddenly, the old demon's eyes shrank. He looked at the Netherworld woman and discovered that she had actually plucked out a strand of hair. What was she trying to do? The red veil fluttered. The Shura Saintess's expression became extremely solemn as she looked at the Netherworld woman's actions. Suddenly, her heart trembled, and her figure flashed, disappearing from where she stood. Stop! With a shout, the Saintess's figure suddenly appeared in the sky, and she shouted at you. However, you had already made her move. She slightly bent her finger and lightly flicked it. A ripping sound rang out. That strand of pitch-black, slender hair shot out at high speed. It was invisible and formless swoosh. Everyone only heard a muffled sound. The old demon's body shrank, and his heart instantly became ice cold. In the next instant, all the energy in his body was sucked out, and his youthful face started to age at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the next instant, he turned into a doddering old man, and his majestic figure became smaller. His legs staggered, and he directly knelt on the ground. With a bang, the old demon's eyes trembled. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. His mind slowly collapsed, and he felt as if all of his energy had been sucked out. His heart was entangled by a strand of pitch-black hair, and with a ripping sound, it was twisted into pieces. Cough, cough, cough. The old demon's body trembled violently, and he coughed out blood. He fell to the ground. With a bang, a cloud of dust rose. You retracted her hand that had flicked out the strand of hair. Her face was expressionless, as if she had done something insignificant, and she didn't care about it at all. However, everyone was stunned, including the Shura Saintess. The old demon died? He died just like that? A strand of hair killed an old demon who had broken through 5 Supreme Being shackles? Everyone was dumbfounded, and the audience felt a chill run down their spines. They didn't dare to believe their eyes as they looked at the beautiful woman floating in the air. That woman was so beautiful. How could she be so terrifying? She said she would kill, and she killed him. The 5 Grandmasters swallowed their saliva, and their faces trembled. The 5 of them together couldn't even defeat the old demon, and in the end, the old demon was easily killed by the other party. This was a little embarrassing. Xiao He and Shimin Xian sucked in a breath of cold air, and they felt their hearts shrink. They didn't think that this waiter would be so terrifying. This was a waiter? She was simply a female killing star. Not only them, but the faces of many people in the audience also trembled. These people in the audience had been to the Cloud Mist restaurant before, and many of them had teased you. Although they were taught a lesson, they suddenly realized that the lesson was simply a reward. Her gentleness made them want to cry. It turned out that they had teased such a female killing star. You actually killed the old demon. The Shurasanis's face was ice cold, and she turned her head to look at you. Hand over Bufong, or else you will also die, you said calmly. The Shurasanis narrowed her eyes, and she looked deeply at you. You looked back at her expressionlessly. In the next instant, the Shurasanis' red lips curled up, and she raised her jade-like arm. The red veil beneath her started to spin, and it quickly retracted into her body. Soon, the red veil wrapped around the saintess' body, and it turned into a red ribbon. However, there was nothing beneath it. The red veil wrapped around him also disappeared. He flipped over, and his face was filled with disbelief as he looked into the distance. There was nothing there. Old. Where's old Boo? Bufong had disappeared. For the first time, the Netherworld woman's expression changed. She realized that she couldn't sense Bufong's aura. How is this possible? Bufong was clearly within the red silk just a moment ago. Honorable had disappeared. Everyone felt their hair stand on end, and a chill ran down their spines. They looked at the Shurasanis as though they had seen a ghost. Where's Bufong? You furrowed her brows, and she coldly turned her head to ask the Shurasanis. The Shurasanis fiddled with the red ribbon, and her red lips curled up, revealing a charming smile. I don't know. Yu's face turned cold, and her figure instantly disappeared into the void. The saintess' eyes narrowed, and with a shake of her body, she suddenly disappeared. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, a series of explosions resounded, and an intense fluctuation spread out. In the next instant, Yu and the saintess figures appeared in the distance. Yu's pitch-black hair fluttered in the wind. The saintess's body was surrounded by a red ribbon. It was another extremely beautiful and incomparably powerful woman. No one would have thought that this saintess, who had suddenly appeared, would actually be so strong. She was actually on par with you. Netherworld woman, you're very strong. It's a pity that you can't kill me, and you won't be able to find Bufong. The saintess chuckled. Her red hair fluttered in the wind, and her beautiful eyes were filled with a smile as she stared at you. Nangong Wuk was sprawled at the place where Bufong had disappeared. His eyes widened, and it was as though he had seen a ghost. Old Boo, was he King kidnapped by that woman? Don't force me. Hand over Bufong. You took a deep breath, and she plucked out another strand of her pitch-black hair. She pointed her finger at the Shurasanis. The smile on the saintess' face disappeared, and she became cold. The red ribbon fluttered, and it seemed as though it had transformed into a doo-doo, wrapping around her voluptuous body. You narrowed her eyes, and, in the next instant, she flicked her finger. Rip! Like a flash of lightning, the void shattered. The saintess's hair fluttered in the wind, and she immediately formed a seal with her hand. In an instant, a mysterious symbol appeared in her hand, and it collided with the strand of hair. A loud explosion resounded, and it seemed as though the void was being torn apart. The terrifying might caused everyone to be in an uproar. You can't kill me. The saintess formed a seal with her hand, and she chuckled. Suddenly, her smile froze, and her body stiffened. Everyone looked at the saintess with a dumbfounded expression. The saintess' face was instantly filled with shame, and she lowered her head to look at the red ribbon that was wrapping around her body. Chapter 549. Buzz. When Bufong realized that the saintess who was originally standing beside him had disappeared, he stood there in a daze. His surroundings were filled with the red muslin. The red muslin was like a stream of water, creating layers of waves. It turned into a blood-red color, and only Bufong was left behind. It was empty and silent. Of course, Bufong didn't pay much attention to this at first. However, there were some strange fluctuations spreading out from the red muslin. The surrounding red muslin lit up with brilliance, and many mysterious arrays were constantly entwining around it. There was something strange about the red muslin. Bufong was certain in his heart. However, he didn't know what was strange about it. He also didn't know what the array was used for and what would happen. Very quickly, the light from the array became extremely bright, and Bufong couldn't help but narrow his eyes. The surrounding scenery changed, and with a swoosh, a suction force appeared. Bufong was sucked into the array and disappeared from his original position. On the saintess' beautiful face, there was a trace of shame and anger. She looked at her chest in disbelief. Or to be more accurate, she looked at the red muslin that was wrapped around her chest. Everyone looked at her with a dumbfounded expression. The top of her chest trembled and it quietly bulged. Then a small head actually popped out from the red muslin. That small head had a dumbfounded expression and its small eyes rolled around. Wasn't that the chicken? Everyone recognized that chicken. It was the 8 treasures chicken that was held in Bufong's hand. 80's small head actually popped out from the red muslin that was wrapped around the saint's body. It seemed to be a little confused about its current situation, and it couldn't help but cluck. Everyone looked at this scene with a strange expression on their faces. What was supposed to be a very serious scene suddenly felt a little funny. Many people looked at 80, and they couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Their hearts were filled with envy and jealousy. The position that 80 had popped out from was really too wonderful. It was between the saintess' breasts. That position was really alluring. In addition to the Shura saintess' embarrassed expression, there was a different flavor to it. This gangster chicken, it was simply a man was inferior to a chicken. You was slightly stunned. Her dark eyes stared at little 8, not knowing what to do for a moment. The Shura saintess' mind went blank. How did this chicken come out from here? Why did it come out of here? That didn't make sense. Could there be a loophole in the formation? The saintess' face was filled with confusion, but she quickly reacted and couldn't help but scream. 80 shook its head, and in the next moment, its body shook and it actually came out alive. With a flap of its wings, it stomped on the ground with its claws and flew into the air. The Shura saintess was originally floating in the air, but with little 80's leap, she directly descended from the sky. The sky was filled with chicken feathers. Everyone stared at the gangster chicken with their mouths agape. It raised its head and spread its wings to soar into the sky. This was indeed a chicken with only ideals. Wait a minute. Everyone suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. This chicken should be with Bufong. Since this chicken could crawl out from that position, what about Bufong? He wouldn't also crawl out from that position, right? If that was really the case, the scene was simply unbearable to watch. Bang! This gangster chef. However, the audience suddenly realized that there was a little bit of anticipation in their hearts. When the others thought of the situation, the saintess naturally guessed it as well. It was already embarrassing enough for a chicken to crawl out from there. If that kid also crawled out from there, then her illustrious reputation as the saintess would be completely ruined. In the next moment, she felt a strange movement of the red silk in front of her chest. Don't be like this. The saintess' face instantly turned deathly pale. In the eyes of the audience, the originally calm and composed saintess suddenly revealed a look of fear. Swish! The red silk rolled and was directly pulled out by the saintess. It shone brilliantly and swayed for a while. A figure appeared from within the red silk. Bufong carried the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, which was emitting a golden light, and appeared with a dumbfounded expression. His figure rolled, and he steadily landed on the ground. The red silk revolved around the saintess' body. The Shura saintess' face was filled with anger as she looked at Bufong. She coldly said, "You stinky chef. You actually dared to disrespect this saintess." The golden dragon bone kitchen knife turned into a wisp of green smoke, and Bu Fong put it away. Disrespect? Don't talk nonsense. Who disrespected you? Bu Fong asked curiously. He really didn't know what happened. Previously, he and 80 were trapped in a white ball of light. He used the golden dragon bone kitchen knife to poke a hole in the ball of light and let 80 come out first. Originally, he wanted to crawl out. In the end, before he could do so, he was thrown out. Thinking about it, that white ball of light should be that woman's trick. Previously, when they were within the range of the red silk, that woman had already started to make arrangements. She was really scheming. The Shura Saintess gritted her teeth. Looking at the innocent expression on Bu Fong's face, her anger surged. In reality, she was also a little shocked. This red silk was a semi-divine tool of her ancient Shura city, and there was a space inside. Previously, she had hidden Bu Fong in that space. Without her control, it was impossible for Bu Fong to come out. However, she never would have thought that a mere supreme being would actually break the restraints of that space and find a chance to crawl out. If he crawled out, then so be it. Moreover, he crawled out from such an embarrassing position. He was stirring up trouble, this stinky hooligan. 80 flapped its wings and swayed on the ground. Bu Fong once again picked 80 up. The corners of his mouth curled up as he calmly looked at the Shura Saintess. I won't go with you. You won't be able to bring me away. Just give up. When Bu Fong said this, Yu's figure had already floated over and landed beside him. With Yu around, the surrounding people felt that Bu Fong's domineering words were very reasonable. Indeed, the strength of that woman with long, black hair was really terrifying. The Saintess floated in the air as the red silk swayed around her body. She was a little unwilling. How could she give up just like that? Even the old monster had died here. If she couldn't bring the Shura Tower back, it would be a huge loss. She couldn't afford such a loss. Moreover, if she went back, she would become a hindrance to those old fellows. You looked at the Shura Saintess indifferently. This Saintess was very strong. She was even stronger than the old monster. However, if she wanted to take Bu Fong away from her, the Saintess's strength was still not enough. The Saintess took a deep breath and calmed herself down. In the next moment, her eyes became cold and merciless. Her slender and beautiful legs emitted a different kind of temptation under the faintly discernible red silk. In the next moment, she moved. Still not giving up? You muttered indifferently as she watched the Saintess's figure disappear into the air. Bu Fong furrowed his brows. He could feel a majestic pressure pressing down from the sky. That Saintess was very strong. 5 swaying chains collided in the air and intertwined with each other, emitting a majestic aura. Shura's seal. Buzz, a delicate shout rang out. In the sky, a blood-colored seal appeared and fiercely shot toward Yu's position. Yu's face was indifferent. Her sparkling feet tapped the ground, and she instantly soared into the sky. It was as if she had turned into a sharp sword and directly pierced through the seal. With a crisp sound, the seal shattered. The Shura Saintess swayed in the air as she continuously sent out blood-colored seals. Her slender fingers rapidly changed. However, in front of you, the seals all shattered. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of energy surged forth and exploded in all directions, causing the surrounding area to be blasted into pieces. The battle between the two of them caused many people to tremble in fear. The energy fluctuations they emitted had long surpassed the peak of the divine physique echelon, who had broken through 5 supreme being shackles. The 5 grandmasters had solemn expressions on their faces. Yu and the Shura Saintess. Their strength caused the grandmasters' hearts to tremble. Grandmaster Xianming's mouth was dry as he stared at the two of them and said, "Could it be that the two of them are existences in the divine soul realm?" The moment these words came out, the other grandmasters were shocked, and they didn't dare to believe it. The divine soul realm was the second realm of the divine realm, and it was also an extremely profound and powerful realm. If the divine physique echelon was to surpass the limits of the mortal body, then the divine soul realm was to surpass the limits of the soul. With a single thought, one could even cause the weather to change. No, impossible. I have never heard of the ancient Shura city's saintess reaching the divine soul realm. Grandmaster Gu, he shook his head in denial. Even if she isn't in the divine soul realm, she isn't far from it. She has broken through all the shackles and is in the perfect state. She is only one step away from condensing the soul ladder and entering the divine soul realm. Grandmaster Xian Ming said solemnly. In an instant, everyone was silent as they sucked in a deep breath. In the Pill Palace, the divine soul realm was a peak expert. It was enough to rule over a first-rate force. Boom! With a loud noise, the red silk was torn to shreds by Nethery. The Shura Saintess's face was incomparably ugly as she retreated in the air. Every step she took caused the void to tremble. Damn it! Why is this Netherworld woman so strong? Didn't they say that the Netherworld woman was cursed and couldn't display her full cultivation? The Saintess was so angry that she bit her red lips. She looked at Bufong, who was standing below and rubbing the head of a chicken. Anger surged in her heart. No, today, she must bring that brat back. The Shura Tower was with him, and he could activate the Shura Tower that only people with the bloodline of the ancient Shura city could activate. There must be a big secret on his body. She waved her hand. A blood-colored talisman floated up and floated in front of her. The blood-colored talisman emitted a blood-colored radiance. The Saintess's hair fluttered in the wind, and her eyes were filled with seriousness. Bufong, you better obediently leave with me. Otherwise, if I activate this talisman, a Netherworld female attendant might not be able to survive. The Saintess's voice reverberated throughout the void. Bufong was stunned, and he couldn't help but tighten his grip. 80's little head was instantly squeezed, and it couldn't help but let out a miserable cry. He was going to squeeze the chicken to death again. Bufong was startled. The Saintess's confident tone didn't seem like she was lying to him. Could it be that the talisman would really put Yu's life in danger? You're really noisy. You stared at the talisman with a profound gaze and said indifferently. A black mark appeared on her forehead, and her long black hair fluttered in the wind. In the next moment, she raised her hand, and a strand of her black hair wrapped around it. She flicked her finger. Buzz, an ink-like radiance shot out and tore through the sky. It wanted to pierce through the blood-colored talisman. What talisman that could threaten the Netherworld woman? You didn't fear it at all. The Saintess bit her red lips, and a baleful look appeared in her eyes. With a thought, the talisman shattered. In the next moment, a majestic aura that made everyone want to submit filled the entire sky. At this moment, Nethery's pitch-black eyes also shrank. Chapter 550. The blood-colored talisman exploded in the air, and a mysterious fluctuation instantly filled the entire sky. A terrifying gust of wind whistled through the air. A terrifying pressure filled the air, and the rolling blood-colored clouds covered the entire sky. At this moment, the entire sky was dyed the color of blood. The Shura Saintess figure floated in the air. Her palms were clasped together, and her eyes were tightly shut. Her graceful hair bun was loosened, and her long red hair cascaded down like a waterfall. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and at this moment, her exquisite and beautiful face seemed to become extremely pure and holy. Behind her, the aura of the 5 supreme being shackles soared into the sky, entangling with each other. When the shackles collided with each other, the sound of clanking could be heard as they swayed unceasingly. Buzz, the buzzing sound rang out, and the monstrous blood-colored clouds revolved as though they were about to descend. An aura that could make people submit to it spread out. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Their entire bodies were suppressed by that terrifying pressure, and they were unable to move. Yu's pitch-black eyes slightly shrank, and for the first time, a solemn expression appeared on her face. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and a pitch-black energy spread out from her body. Bufong sucked in a deep breath of air. This pressure was extremely terrifying. However, to Bufong, it was useless. Hence, Bufong wasn't as weak as the others, and he didn't fall to the ground on his butt. He furrowed his brows, and a gust of wind howled, sweeping up the crushed rocks on the ground. It tore apart the velvet rope that bound his hair, and in an instant, his pitch-black hair fluttered in the wind. Suddenly, Bufong lowered his head. He felt a scorching heat coming from his chest. He took out the source of the heat, and it was actually the small pagoda that he wore around his neck. At this moment, this small pagoda was emitting rays of light, as though it had been placed into a furnace to be roasted. Strange fluctuations continuously spread out. Why did this small pagoda become so strange? Bufong was puzzled. Perhaps it was because of that blood-colored talisman? Bufong raised his head, and he looked at the sky. Over there, the blood-colored clouds were tumbling, as though they had transformed into a vortex. A blurry silhouette slowly condensed in the void. The monstrous blood clouds seemed to have turned into a human face, and below the face floated a blurry figure. That figure was huge. At the very least, when the Shura Saintess stood beside that figure, she looked extremely tiny. Whoosh! The strong wind howled, blowing the gravel on the ground into the air. Everyone in the Heavenly Mist City's central plaza was trembling in fear. What kind of existence was this? Just the aura alone was enough to make them tremble. Welcome, Azura Sovereign. The Shura Saintess' long hair spread out and her long eyelashes trembled. She finally opened her eyes and looked at the majestic figure. That blurry silhouette made her feel reverence. Shura Sovereign. Her words were like a clap of thunder that exploded in everyone's hearts, causing their hairs to stand on end. Misha and Tong, he were already kneeling respectfully on the ground, not daring to move. When they faced you, they were afraid, but when they faced the Shura Sovereign, they were filled with reverence and fanaticism. The Shura Sovereign was the object of reverence in their hearts. He was the supreme existence in their hearts. The figure slightly trembled, and in the next moment, two blood-colored beams of light shot out from his face. It was a look of superiority. The Saintess took a deep breath. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she would not choose to break that blood-colored talisman. Every generation's Saintess had a Shura Sovereign clone talisman, which was used to protect her life. Once she used it, it was the same as throwing away her life-saving method. The price she had to pay was huge. Thus, in order to make up for the loss of her trump card, she had to bring Bufong away. She had to take back the Shura Tower, and she had to research Bufong's secrets. The Shura Sovereign's clone seemed to understand the Saintess's thoughts, and its huge body slightly moved in the void. A deafening rumble resounded. The faces of the Pill Palace's alchemy grandmasters paled. Shura Sovereign. This was actually the Shura Sovereign's clone. That was a true existence at the Divine Soul Realm. Moreover, it was an extremely powerful existence at the Divine Soul Realm. Even if it was just a clone, it wasn't something that a divine physique echelon realm expert could deal with. Facing the Shura Sovereign's terrifying pressure, they couldn't help but tremble. Crack! With a loud explosion, the projection array in the center of the plaza shattered. The people of the Pill Palace, who had been paying attention to the situation in Heavenly Mist City, were stunned. In the next moment, everyone went crazy. Why did it disappear? Why did the image disappear? The Shura Sovereign had appeared. How could this year's Magical Hand Conference be so exciting? At this moment, the higher-ups of the Pill Palace also took action. Some experts rushed to Heavenly Mist City. However, it was too late. You coldly stared at the huge figure, and the aura on her body rose rapidly. On her forehead, a black mark spread out, causing her originally cold aura to become even colder. She was like a block of ice that wouldn't melt for 10,000 years. Netherworld woman? The Shura Sovereign's voice was vast and distant, as though it reverberated in the entire world. He seemed to be a little surprised as he muttered to himself. You didn't say anything. Her figure floated up again, and a pitch-black energy enveloped her body. Buzz, the void was torn apart, and a pitch-black, ancient wooden ships slowly sailed out of the crack in space. The Netherworld woman on the Netherworld ship. This was the strongest combination. Yu's white and tender feet stepped on the deck of the Netherworld ship. She stood upright at the bow of the ship, her eyes deep and her aura cold. The Shura Sovereign's gaze didn't stay on Yu for too long. In the next moment, it shifted and landed on Bu Fong, who was being carried by Yu and thrown onto the Netherworld ship. Bu Fong held 80 and looked at the majestic figure with a solemn expression. 80 shrunk its head, and its small eyes widened. Sizzle, the blood-red tower became even hotter, and the temperature was strangely high, causing Bu Fong to furrow his brows. Shura, tower. The Shura Sovereign's eyes emitted a blazing light. In the next moment, his aura surged. He raised his hand, and the energy in the sky gathered, forming a huge palm that covered the sky. It slapped down on the Netherworld ship. Boom! In an instant, the entire space seemed to collapse. Bu Fong could feel the Netherworld ship shake. Yu was incomparably cold, and her eyes were solemn. She raised her white arm and slapped out. In an instant, a surge of energy surged from the Netherworld ship, colliding with that sky-covering palm. Boom! The Netherworld ship was directly hit by that palm, and with a creaking sound, it smashed onto the ground. It kept moving, causing the ground to rise into the sky. As the Netherworld woman, you don't even have 1/10 of your strength in the secret realm. You can't stop me. The Shura Sovereign's vast voice resounded once more. Everyone felt their breaths stagnate. Within the ruins, smoke and dust billowed. You stood upright in front of the Netherworld ship. All of a sudden, her body shook violently, and she staggered back several steps. Bu Fong raised his hand and supported Yu's body. At this moment, Yu's face had become deathly pale, just like when they first met. There wasn't a single trace of blood on her face, and the black lines on her face seemed to have come to life, wriggling like earthworms. Bu Fong supported Yu's body, and he could feel that her body was shaking violently. What's going on? Bu Fong was extremely puzzled. Looking at Yu's appearance, he had a bad premonition in his heart. The cursed Netherworld woman can only display her true strength in the secret realm. In the outside world, every bit of energy she uses is 10 times more than the amount she uses in the secret realm. Once her energy is exhausted, the curse will erupt. The majestic figure's eyes were like 2 scorching suns, extremely blazing. Curse! Bu Fong suddenly understood. Blackies seemed to have said that Yu's body had a problem with the curse, and that she needed a sufficient amount of spiritual essence to dispel it. This was also the reason why Yu liked to eat dragon blood rice so much. Bu Fong supported Yu's body, and with a wave of his hand, a purple jade bottle appeared in his hand. He flicked the bottle's mouth, and several purple crystal source purple essence flew out and entered Yu's mouth. As soon as the crystal source purple essence entered her mouth, surging spiritual essence burst forth, and Yu's unsightly face regained some of its color. His trembling body also stopped. Bu Fong let out a soft breath, and he patted Yu's back, as though he was giving her a chance to catch her breath. Yu straightened her body, and her pitch-black eyes looked at Bu Fong. Then, she coldly turned her head around and looked at the Shura Sovereign. She furrowed her brows, and her aura floated in the air. However, Bu Fong pressed down on her shoulder, and her aura stagnated. Bu Fong didn't say anything, and he just looked at the Shura Sovereign expressionlessly. Hand over the Shura Tower to this Sovereign, and follow this Sovereign for a trip. The Shura Sovereign, who was in the sky, suddenly lowered his huge face, and a terrifying aura spread out. He stared at Bu Fong and said, the small tower, which was hanging on Bu Fong's neck, floated up, and it seemed as though it was about to fly toward the Shura Sovereign. Bang! However, in the next moment, Bu Fong raised his hand and grabbed the small pagoda. The scalding small pagoda emitted a scorching heat. What if I don't hand it over? Bu Fong asked calmly. Bu Fong was actually somewhat angry in his heart. The Shura Sovereign's domineering attitude made him very unhappy, and that commanding tone of voice made him even more unhappy. Although he was just a chef, he was a chef with ideals. He wasn't weak. Bufang's actions made everyone dumbstruck. Facing the Shura sovereign, he was actually so calm and unyielding. Was there a hole in his brain? With the Shura sovereign's terrifying cultivation, he could slap him to death with a single slap. The saintess also looked at Bufang as though she was looking an idiot. She didn't understand what else Bufang was relying on. His greatest support, the Netherworld woman, had already been defeated. So what was he still acting tough for? The Shura sovereign's eyes were deep, and in the next instant, he coldly snorted. The entire space seemed to freeze. The sky-covering palm slapped down on Bufang. This sovereign isn't negotiating with you. Since that's the case, don't blame this sovereign for being impolite. Rumble. Bufang stood on the Netherworld ship, and above his head was the huge palm that covered the entire sky. However, just as the palm was about to cover Bufang, it suddenly stopped. The Shura sovereign was a little bewildered, and he tilted his head in confusion. You want to capture Bufang? Have you asked the Lord Go? Really? You can't even let a dog sleep properly. Rumble. Below the palm, the void was torn apart, and a fat dog walked out with cat-like steps. It yawned, and its eyes were hazy. A gentle and magnetic voice reverberated in the void. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.